Okay, we're gonna call the Polk County Board of Supervisors Tuesday, May 18th board meeting to order. Receipt of evidence and getting a proper notice.
The County Board of Supervisors May 18th meeting notice and agenda was posted in the Government Center building in two places, posted on the county website on May 7th, 2021, and was published in a legal newspaper the week of May 10th, 2021. In addition, on Friday, May 7th, 2021 at 11:28 a.m., Office of the County Clerk distributed copies of such notice of meeting to supervisors and media via email or mail. The notice of amended agenda was posted in the Government Center, posted on the county website, and copies of such notice of meeting were distributed to supervisors and media via email or mail on Friday, May 14th, 2021.
And Malay, does that constitute a proper notice?
It does, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
A roll call?
Brad Olson,
Here.
Doug Rowdy,
Here.
Steve Warndall,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Tracy LeBlanc, here, Dan Rook,
Here.
Mike Pritchard,
Here.
Sharon Kelly,
Here.
Tim O'Connell,
Here.
Lee Middleton,
Here.
Jay Loop,
Here.
Fran Duncanson, here, Russ Arkan, John Bonaprise,
Here.
Joe Demmeling,
Here.
all 15.
John, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah, before we proceed with that, I got a couple comments, things that was brought to my attention. First of all, Kim, it's just a thrill for all of us to see it right here at the board meeting. Welcome you back. And on behalf of the board, I want to express our condolences to Joe Demling, sister Kathy Klotsky, whose funeral was today. I see you wish the best of your family. And something we probably take for granted, and this was brought up to me, Amer Family Restaurant one day this week. An 88-year-old gentleman came up to me and thanked us for the publication of the minutes. And we probably take that for granted, the number of people that read the minutes with the media we have right now. And so one thing I wanted to get in minutes was we have so many people on our board that are serving in town government and county government. And so I'd like to start with Chairman Jay Luke. Why don't you introduce yourself at town government so we can get this in the in our minutes, Madam Clerk, so people can be aware.
Well, introduce myself. I don't know that. Actually, I'm a town chairman in Lincoln Town for, I don't know, probably close to 20 years, along with this position.
Tracy?
I'm a Clayton clerk, Tracy LeBlanc.
I'm Brad Olson.
Brad Olson, Town of Clam Falls.
Karen Kelly, Town of St. Clair Falls.
Anybody else? Well, thanks for your service and a Navy veteran, Luke, you want to lead us in pledge allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay.
Number 5, disclosure of board member conflicts. If anyone has a conflict, when we get to an agenda item. Supervisor Middleton, did you want to talk about that at all? Or are you going to wait till we get to that agenda item?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I had talked to Chris earlier today because I was curious if being a builder puts him in conflict on their shoreland conversation. So we talked about it. Chris says he doesn't. So I guess that's obviously up to you.
We could talk about it. I think it'd be probably a good time. And I don't want to get in a debate about it, but maybe Malia, can you explain conflicts of interest? Because I did call corporation counsel on that.
Sure. So when we look at a pecuniary interest, that would rise to an ethical conflict. It would have to be a direct pecuniary interest. So, Mr. Nelson, if you were voting on something to change a particular parcel, to rezone a particular parcel, because that would then cause you to have a direct financial gain, you would have to recuse yourself from that vote. But however, something like this, it would be like asking a bar owner to recuse themselves from voting on snowmobiles or something like that. So no, I don't believe that there is a conflict for you.
One of the questions I brought up with her, because, you know, I've heard other people say that when we have conflict of interest, and this has been brought up before, you know, we have other people that are self-employed in this room. Kim O'Connell's a good one, right? So Kim's been putting sewers in his whole life. Clearly, he's on zoning and he's voting tonight. We're going to be voting on shoreline ordinance and it's got a sewer provision in it. Certainly, you know, Amy, you own a company that makes bicycle covers. The same issue you brought up with me is, well, if you're going to promote more bicycles in Polk County and you're going to promote more bicycling, that could have a direct influence over your business because you could sell more bike covers. So I think this idea that, you know, because someone is self-employed and is voting on things that we do, I guess I'd like to get this thing put to bed so it doesn't come up every time like it has in the past. And I just really think it's important that Malia explains really what this conflict of interest, it's on our agenda every month. And I'm not quite sure why we're dealing with it like this, but yeah, I don't want supervisors calling me up and asking me, oh, you have a conflict before we have a board meeting. And you know, if you need to be educated on what a conflict of interest is, you should call the attorney first and reaching out with a text message. So I just want to clear the air that there is no conflict with me with voting on any zoning ordinance changes. So,
Well, thanks, Malia, and I just think it's fine to talk about it, so now we're good.
okay, good. All right.
So, thank you.
Yep. Yes, John.
I just like to say over about 20 years, the things we deal with are just the items that are on the agenda and on top of the table at that particular night. And there's why this is on the agenda every month is really confusing to the public. A lot of people, why do you have that on there? Are you having problems?
I agree.
And unless we see something that is on particular interest on the agenda or on top of the table, I think it's necessary. Thank you.
Well, maybe next time we do rules of orders, we'll go back and just review why we put it on there and what the intention was. But
Correct.
all right, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
We have a second? Any discussion? See none, all in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Carried. We have a motion to approve the adoption of the consent agenda. Kim? Supervisor Olson, second. Any discussion about the consent agenda? Right, seeing none. Then all in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Carried. Public comments. We have public comments? Okay.
We do. I'm Janice Larson with the Polk County Fair Society. The Polk County Fair originated in 1861 in East Farmington. It was relocated to St. Croix Falls in 1894 on the land that was owned by the William Blanding Farm. Racehorsing was the first big event. It raised money to buy the land, to build the grandstand. It also built the original horse barn. It built the H barn, which housed the cattle in the petting zoo. It contained the first show ring and bleachers. Many other buildings were built within the next following years. The fair brought people into Polk County from all over. The toll bridge between St. Croix Falls and Taylor's Falls was actually free during the fair time. Cattle, chickens, horses, and spectators would arrive by train downtown. They'd walk their animals up the hill. The fair went on year after year. In 1974, the Polk County Fair Society decided to enter into a mutual agreement with the Polk County Board of Supervisors to give the land and the buildings to the county for $1. This was a mutual agreement. They wrote a memorandum of understanding. It's recorded in the Register of Deeds. The document was mutually updated in 2003. It is still a legal binding document. Polk County Fair is one of the largest events in Polk County. With attendance of up to 38,000 each year, a single tractor pull can bring in as many as 9,000 people. We're extremely fortunate to have the implement dealers who donate tractors to us. Sometimes we need something that they can't get, so we have to rent it from the highway department. We purchased a lawnmower to mow the grass. We purchased a tractor and a mower to mow the larger areas. We've built fences. We've purchased cement to make the walkways handicap accessible and safer, and many other expenses. You'll hear talks tonight about a conditional use permit between the Polk County Fair Society and the city of St. Croix Falls. Yes, we did pause the CUP that we had submitted to them. The Polk County and Cedar Corp basically wrote it. We threw a few tidbits in, but they wrote it. How were we to continue without knowing if we'd ever have a grandstand? Also, if we would have gotten the grandstand in the plan that we originally asked for, we wouldn't have to have a CUP. We would have been grandfathered in. Again, we've been there since 1894. We've continuously been badgered about dream big. If you don't, the county's not going to go for anything. Well, this is where we are today. We have been asked how we are going to pay back for the new grandstand. We agreed to give $400,000 to the project, of which we are the only ones that had put a dollar amount aside. There's been talks about how the fair is going to pay back the rest of the money. We still don't really know what is expected of us. In my time on the fair board, there has been several changes in the county administration, including 4 different county administrators. We have been moved from the Parks and Recs Division to the Highway Division, from the Environmental Service Committee to the Executive Committee. In closing, I just ask that you keep an open mind tonight and listen to all the information that you receive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Ted Johnson. I'm an Alden Township resident. I'm an Alden Town supervisor, and I was a fair board member or on the fair board for 17 years. The MOU, as was previously stated, was a collaborative effort that was put together in 1974. It was revised a couple of times, and it put the emphasis on who was responsible for what. And it clearly defined in there what the county's responsibility was. When I was on the county FSA committee, I was on the Land and Water Committee for 7 years. During that time, the Land and Water Committee oversaw the lime quarry, land and water, and extension. And at that time, Dana Fry was the administrator, and there was a $500,000 notation or plan put in place in the capital improvement project plan for the replacement of a grandstand. That was in that CIP plan for a number of years. I'd say 5, 6 years. I don't remember the exact number. So the county had every intention of doing something and helping with the financing of that grandstand. Fast forward to 2018, a resolution was passed by 2/3 majority vote of the county board for 1.3 million. Isn't it amazing how as we wait on things, as how things escalate in price? Since that time, there's been, as was mentioned, there's been many other issues that have been brought up. Cedar Corp came in, all of a sudden it went from a 1,500 seat grandstand to a 3,000 seat grandstand. And lo and behold, it's gotten more expensive. The county board is a legal governing body that has the right to make resolutions and to spend county money. When they make resolutions, they're responsible to follow through with those resolutions. My suggestion is you just sold the lime quarry, which, and I said I was on that committee a number of years ago. That was kind of a debacle as far as I'm concerned, as far as on the county's part. Take that 1.15 million or whatever the price is after it was sold. That was an ag enterprise that was to benefit the farmers of the county. Take that money and put it towards a new grandstand at the fairgrounds. What better showcase of agricultural ideas and exhibits is there than that? You've got an opportunity to do this, and you've got a responsibility. Make sure that you understand that your responsibility is also stated in an MOU. It's a legal document that has bound the fair and the county since 1974. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Carrie Moline Swenson, a Vice President of the Polk County Fair, and I'm going to speak to you briefly about our involvement with the MOU. The Polk County Fair Board, Fair Society membership was trying to be actively involved in the discussion and negotiations with the MOU. As previously stated, the Polk County Fair Society and Polk County are part to a legal and binding document at the MOU that was first drafted in 1974 and last updated in 2003. Fairgrounds were turned over in trust, believing that with support from the county that the fair would grow and continue to showcase the youth of the county, as well as what is the best of Polk County. In February of 2020, the Polk County Fair Society was given a draft of the new MOU that was proposed by the current administration. This is a total rewrite of the existing MOU, and it vastly changed the scope of the management of the grounds. We met again to discuss this MOU on June 4th. This time we also brought with us the CPA from the firm that conducts the annual review of the financial workings of the fair. So we brought this with, and this was fully disclosed, the finances of the Polk County Fair Society to the current administration. And we also discussed the MOU and updates. Another meeting was held again in late July discussing the MOU, and in mid-August, a rough draft was put together by the Fair Society, a rough draft of the MOU, and that was sent to the county. There's many times that we were kind of thrown under the bus because I don't think it was seemed that we were doing our part, but we were trying to actively work with coming up with the MOU. We met again on September 21st and discussed the MOU and some changes. The Fair Society, the members there at that time thought we were going to be receiving another updated MOU coming out of that September 21st meeting, but that did not happen because there were some pushback from some of the citizens of a group in St. Croix Falls who were opposed to the proposed new grandstand and track upgrade at the fairgrounds. About that time, all of the maintenance projects and things that were supposed to be happening during 2020 at the county fairgrounds were all put on hold, and the monies were withheld. No further improvements could be made. So in December, we were informed that we were supposed to have completely rewritten the MOU. And about this time, our funding was withheld, and the Polk County administration had started discussions about their new proposed Center Point complex. So at the January meeting of the Polk County Fair Society Board of Directors, given all the things that had taken place in 2020, the full board decided to seek legal counsel to help us with constructing and moving forward with this MOU process with the county. I know that a lot of the people involved that we've been working on this process don't have a vested interest in the fair. Some have never even attended. But the people who volunteer their time and who work and are dedicated to the fair, the fairgrounds are a part of the experience of the Polk County Fair. It connects the generations, and we believe that the fairgrounds is the heritage of Polk County and part of the future of Polk County. And we at the Fair Society, we believe that that should be protected and preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. All
That's all, Chris.
right, any other public comment? Yeah, right, okay. Comments closed. County Board Chair report. Typical busy month of meetings attended and a lot of phone calls. The one thing I did want to hand out, everyone's got on their desk. And sometimes it's nice to have it read. I don't know, I'm not the best reader of this letter. I think it's pretty important. If you guys want it read, I'll read it. If you guys just want to read it on your own time. But it's basically from the Wisconsin Counties Association, Mark O'Connell. They've taken a position about what's been going on with the Stour Trail. And this was a letter that the Wisconsin Counties Association wrote to Secretary Preston Cole, who's the DNR secretary, and basically discusses the position that the Counties Association has with the kind of the issues that we've been having with the DNR and the whole process. So you guys just good with that as a report? You want to read it on your own time? I'll leave it at that. Or if you guys have any questions about this particular letter, I certainly will answer them on how it got to this point. See any? Oh, do you? Okay.
Well, I haven't digested this or even read it yet, but does this mean that, is the Wisconsin County Association directing sort of process structure to the DNR, that the DNR should work in?
Tell you what, I'll read it. I am writing to you regarding the MOU and related cooperative state easement between Polk County and the DNR relating to the development and operations of what is now known as the Stour Seven Lakes State Trail. For years, Polk County had been working in partnership with the DNR to develop a joint plan for use of this trail, consistent with the parties' obligations and understandings reflect in the MOU and easement. The joint plan, which the DNR approved in January of this year, was developed in an effort to address the concerns and interests of all stakeholders. And further, the joint mission of Polk County and the DNR to achieve operation of the Stour Seven Lakes Trail for public use. Polk County expanded a great deal of time, effort, and financial resources in ensuring the joint plan was developed not only in coordination with the DNR, but also in conjunction with robust public comment input. One of the stakeholder groups in the county has now filed litigation that seeks to undermine the mutual goals set forth by Polk County and the DNR regarding the MOU, easement, and joint plan. The association is very concerned with outside pressure seeking to disrupt an open, transparent, and cooperative process between Polk County and the DNR and all other interested parties. The Wisconsin Counties Association has not been notified of any attempt to execute any process of termination of the Seven Lakes MOU or the easement at this time. If we are incorrect in regard, we would appreciate you advising us. It is important to us and our member counties to have faith in both the written terms of a contractual relationships with our state agency partners and the process by which those terms are reached. Outside interests play an important role in forming policy, but once the policy is formed, it needs to be honored unless mutual change by the public officials responsible for the policy. Allowing an outside interest group to dictate policy changes through litigation, especially after every effort has been made to provide the outside interest groups with a voice in the policymaking process is, as I'm sure you would agree, dangerous. While we do not expect you to discuss this matter that are subject of pending litigation involving the DNR, We would appreciate your confirmation that the DNR will support an overall partnership between the department and counties relating to the development and management of a wonderful trail system and honor the memorandum of understanding negotiated, agreed to, and signed by both county and the DNR. Please know the Wisconsin Counties Association, Polk County and county officials across the state stand ready to work with the DNR to address concerns and otherwise improve and update standard practices. If there is a role the association could play in assisting with the resolution of litigation surrounding the Seven Lakes State Trail, please let us know. Counties' relationships with the DNR in relation to the trail systems are incredibly important, and we will do what we can to assist you with the relationship. Thank you for taking the time to consider my comments. And this was addressed to Governor Evers and the DNR. And but if basic, and I've had a lot of questions about what's going on with the Stour Trail. And I think what the Counties Association is trying to say is, you know, without saying too much about it, is that we feel like the Counties Association says we did everything we think was done properly in the process. And the Counties Association is just not for outside interest groups trying to change policy and trying to negotiate one particular user group to get what they want. If all the user groups would come together and agree to something, I'm sure the county board and everyone would be fine to listen, but we can't let one user group, because they didn't like what they got, try to upset this throughout the whole state. So I understand this has gone to other counties. There's a lot of county support throughout the state that is supporting what we did. And I think it's really good to see the Counties Association step up and take a role in this case. So basically, we've got the attention of the state here in our little Polk County. So just wanted to give everyone an update on it. Do you have questions about that?
I don't know if it's a question for you or for Malia, but what is the policy that they're particularly or specifically referring to in this letter? They keep
The
saying-
master plan.
Oh, they call that policy?
That's our policy. We passed the master plan, yeah. John?
Will this be entered as a official document in the as court document?
Yes.
Schedule, yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't think so. Malia could answer that.
No, I believe this is outside of the litigation.
This isn't part of the litigation. The Counties Association, not part of the, it's the DNR and it's Polk County.
Yeah. So can you tell us where we're at with it?
Malia, because I brought this up in my report, would you be able to give us any update on where we're at with the Stour? I get a lot of public asking about it, and I certainly could support you answering questions for me.
Sure. So there are the two separate actions, the one that was initiated by the Friends Group against the county specifically, and then there's the one where the Friends Group initiated an action against the DNR, but did not include Polk County. We have intervened in that action, so we are now involved in both of the actions. None of the records have been filed. In other words, the county has just recently completed what we believe is our record that needs to go to the circuit court. Now it's the Friends' opportunity to review what we say is our record, and they can supplement it or say that things should be taken out of it. Really, the record includes public comments going back over the years of the master planning process, the information from Tool Design, all of the public meetings, so the videos of the meetings, both at Environmental Services and the county board. All of that is the record that is going to the circuit court. And the DNR has to file their record, because what's being challenged in the case against the DNR directly from the Friends is they are challenging that letter, that January letter where the DNR said to the county, we believe you have complied with the MOU. So they're challenging that. The DNR is making some arguments that that is not something that can be challenged in this way. So there's a lot of motion practice and pre-trial practice happening behind the scenes. It's kind of boring, to be honest with you. It's a lot of lawyers writing long emails and letters back and forth. And I believe on the 24th, we have another status conference with Judge Black, and that might let us know when we're going to get moving on some things.
Thank you, Malia.
Mhm.
Any other questions about the letter, Star Trail? Right. That's all I have for Chair's report. County Administrator?
Okay, just an update. Some of you heard this in committee meetings from Mr. Roberts, but COVID expenses, if you're curious, have reached just under $1 million associated with it. The good news is through federal state support, much of that got reimbursed. In fact, all but $16,000 out of that close to $1 million has been reimbursed. I bring that up here to really thank people, the staff, people in this county government who have been working, not only being disciplined in how they're spending money, but in following new processes to make sure that we did everything correctly up front, submitted it, and we got it all 100% of it that we submitted reimbursed. So a special thank you to all the directors, all the department heads and managers who had to sweat through the details. In particular, Chad and Tanya deserve a lot of credit for the work they're doing in their two divisions. We also got a letter of good news. The Polk County Child Support Agency. If you're not familiar with them, they're responsible for things like establishing who is the parent of a child and making sure that parents are paying their child support services. They have been recognized by the State Department of Children and Families with an Outstanding Achievement Award for 2020. We don't always congratulate these people when they do good work, but I wanted to point out the director, Chad Hogue, his key staff members, Nicole Ewing Vitalis, Chris Lindy, Shelley Frederickson, Callie Branstead, B. Fulgren, Kim Mortensen, and our corporation council staff. So hats off to them for doing a great job in getting us recognition. Another topic of interest, the American Rescue Plan Fund. There's a lot of people asking about it, suggesting ideas on how to spend that money. As we've said before, half of those funds, about $4.25 million, will be deposited any day into the county coffers. There have been some guidance sent out, but there's some disagreement on how to interpret it between the state, the Wisconsin County Association, and the federal treasury. So as we get that information, the process going forward is we will put together a summary of the guidelines, what they mean and how we should proceed. We'll present it to the General Government Committee, present it to the board. This should be hopefully next month. And we will present what we think are some ideas on how it could be used, but we are asking that if anyone has suggestions, feed them in through the General Government Committee or me, and the same for municipalities or organizations. I've had many people come to me already and say, how are you going to use that money? And I tell them, one, Board of Supervisors will determine that. But I said, the key from the feds is make sure it impacts economic stimulus. Let's think about the whole county, not just individual businesses or departments or organizations. Let's do something that will affect the county and help the most people in the biggest way. So we will be presenting the information to you here in this next month, and you all will have your opportunity to decide how we use it. No hurry to spend it. We have until 2024 to have it expended or committed to expend. But it's an opportunity that we want to take advantage of. A couple other things real quickly. Drug court graduation this Friday, the 21st at 10 a.m. in the community room of the Justice Center. You're all welcome to attend that. Important thing that we do. Also, as supervisors, you're all invited to Apple River Park ceremony on Monday, May 24th at 1 p.m. Very happy with the effort that our folks in environmental services and public safety, public works are doing. The new Department of Parks and Trails is kicking off their effort, and they're proud to show off to you what they've done so far at Apple River Park. So 1 o'clock, you're invited to attend on Monday, the 24th.
Any questions for the administrator? John?
The money that's gonna be deposited, is the county allowed to invest that and gain some interest?
That is a good question, and yes, that's what we've been told. So what we will be doing is meeting with Finance Committee and PMA, our financial advisors, and we will, that money, instead of just sitting there, will be in a very secure, conservative, interest-bearing account, and that could grow and we can use.
Supervisor Warndall.
Is it 10 o'clock for that graduation?
Yes.
I had 9 o'clock too, so.
That's when the court is, the.
Court is at 9.
Is at 9. and the
Peak is at 10.
Graduation take place during the court part of it?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, okay.
That's when the cake.
Thank you.
One graduate.
Right. Number 11 on the agenda, appointments, county administrator.
We have two appointments that are reappointments, and they're both folks who have done a good job for us. Bernie Damaris on the Board of Adjustments. These are, both of them are 3-year appointments. He has expressed an interest to continue doing it, and we've got good feedback. Then the other, Gary Johnson with the Veteran Services, he too has stepped up and said this is something that's important to him, and he asked to be reappointed, and I've agreed to that. So
You
with
need a
that,
move for confirmation?
Yes.
So move for.
We got a first, a second. We got a second. Second, just to be on the record, I won't be voting on the Board of Adjustment individual. Conflict of interest possibly. Me it is.
a second.
Vice
So we have, yeah, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 12, update department statistics regarding the methamphetamine epidemic. Is that Chad?
It is. So one of the committees, I'm trying to recall, I think executive committee, tasked me a couple months ago with coming up with a way to present like a monthly representation of substance abuse in the county and basically an accountability index for how we're dealing with it. So I worked with the CJCC staff and we tried to identify a way to capture that monthly data that we could come up with. What you guys have in front of you is the information that will be in the scorecard. I'm working on the presentation. It'll begin in June. Board meeting will be the first one. But it's broken out in 4 sections. The first, defendants, is just like statistical. Just kind of gives you an idea of the kind of people that are, being charged with substance abuse crimes or drug and choice, that kind of thing. If they're a repeat offender, if they repeated in the last 12 months. Arrest and jail population has to deal with the enforcement arm, kind of an index on how many are getting arrested in the county, how many are in jail, how law enforcement is performing. Charging decisions and whether it's possession, delivery, paraphernalia, where they were dismissed. That's regarding prosecution. Number diverted, those are the various programs at the CJCC. And convictions, that has to do with the judiciary and the court system. Probation, suspended confinement. So what you all will get each month is a spot in time. We're going to use the data set from the last working day of the month. And we'll prep that for the next board meeting. And you'll get, I'm just going to have a few charts in there, fairly simplified 1-page scorecard. I think that's where we're going to start from. If you guys don't like it, we'll have more if we can. But we tried to find some data that we're able to get our hands on and be able to put together each month that we thought fairly represented each section.
Are there questions for Chad on this? I gotta say, big shout out to Chad for going through this and getting this. This is a very difficult project to get buy-in for everyone to start basically measuring what we're doing here. So I just thanks Chad a lot for doing that.
Does Sheriff Walk have any comments on that?
Sheriff Walk, would you comment on this at all? Do you have anything to say?
I would just say that data collection is a big part of CJCC, and that's the one thing we lack, and that should be a FTE for that. When CJCC was formed, that was one of the issues that we thought was lacking. And being able to analyze data is a big thing. So I think this is a step, but I think we actually need a person to get involved in the data collection.
Budget time, we're gonna be wanting to talk about finding an FTE.
I think so. I think it would benefit everybody.
Thank you. COVID-19 update.
So a lot has changed in the last month.
Really?
Go figure, right? So I'm going to start with our case activity. We started seeing a little bit of a jump in March. April took a really big jump, and now it seems like we might be trending a little bit down. So we're keeping an eye on it, but still needing to be careful. Hopefully we can get that going back down so we can get out of that very high status. The other thing with our vaccine clinics, we are transitioning away from the mass drive-through that we had been doing since January. Hugely successful, but we hit a wall and just couldn't get people to drive through. So we've changed up our strategy a little bit, and we are doing pop-up clinics around the communities. We've been at Frontier Ag. Yesterday we were at Marketplace. Today we were at Wayne's and Luck, and it is picking up. Word is getting out there. Not doing to the level that we were doing through the mass clinics. We've got plenty of vaccines, so if you know people who need it, check our Facebook page. We've got flyers. We'll be putting it in the yellow paper and advertising it so people know where we're at. We also have walk-in clinic here on Tuesdays from 9 to 3, so people can just walk in without an appointment and get their vaccine. I believe we're offering both Moderna and Johnson & Johnson as long as we have it. Throughout this whole vaccine process, our health departments, and we partnered with Burnett County, we have given 10,355 doses through May 13th. And now they're starting to trickle in. We, from a county's perspective, Polk County has 18,000 people have received at least the first dose, and 15,000 have completed the series, receiving either 1 or 2 doses, with the J&J being a 1 dose. So we're not, we're about halfway to where we need to be for herd immunity of 80%. So still working on getting those people vaccinated if they want it. We also heard in the last week that the Pfizer vaccine is open for ages 12 and up. We do have 1 Pfizer vaccinator in the county, so we're working with them. If we know of kids or schools that want to have a vaccine or a vaccine clinic, we're getting them connected. We don't have it at our health department, so we're not able to give it to the kids. There is new guidance out that just came out with regards to masking or face coverings. So as long as you are fully vaccinated, you do not need to wear a mask inside. Outside, you can resume your normal activities as you had before the pandemic. But that is for fully vaccinated, and that means 2 weeks after you received your vaccine series, either the Johnson & Johnson 1 dose or the 2 doses. There's just a few caveats with that: public transportation, school settings, healthcare settings, correctional facilities, homeless shelters, and other settings that have additional regulations. So for the most part, we are not required to wear a mask. And I believe you put out a notice on Friday for county staff and public visiting that, if you're not vaccinated, still encouraged to wear a mask, but if you are fully vaccinated, not required. Like I mentioned, we do have very high case activity. It's going down. We're at from 10.8% over the last 7 to 7.3%. The state average is 3.1. So we want to keep on going in that direction. We have 6 hospitalizations for COVID-19 at this time. Our demand for vaccine is lower. Our last 2nd dose clinic over at the Highway Shop is this Thursday. The mobile vaccine clinics I talked about. walk-in clinic. And we are offering testing. So on this end of the building, they can come in and get a vaccine, and on that end of the building, they can get tested for COVID-19. So we're keeping them separate. We've got saliva tests and Mondays and Wednesdays, and it's been pretty busy with people doing a drive up to do that saliva test. So we'll keep doing that until we run out of tests. That's it.
Any questions for Tanya? We need a motion to go to committee of the whole. Second? Go, second it. All in favor, say aye. Carried. The whole update, go right to 15, update and discussion regarding Fair Society's proposal to eliminate the MOU and ties with the county relating to fairgrounds. I believe Malia is going to discuss this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the letter has been distributed to all of the supervisors. I did make a presentation at the Executive and General Government Committee. They held a joint committee at the end of one and the beginning of the other because both of those committees were dealing with fair issues. So rather than giving it twice, and so I know a lot of you have already heard some of this, and we did have some public comments today from members of the Fair Board. But I just want to start with the highlights, and specifically, this letter is from an attorney that was hired by the Fair Society. I did have a conversation with this attorney after I received this letter. The letter was sent just to me. It didn't copy all of the board members. So I had some time to digest it before I even called the attorney. But I asked, in this letter, basically the Fair Society through their attorney is saying they no longer wish to have any type of partnership with the county going forward. They want to end any agreement that might exist at the present time. And I asked the attorney if he thought there was any way that we could get his client, the Fair Society, back to the table to see if we can repair whatever rift in our working cooperative relationship, whatever that is. And his statement to me was that it was like a bad contentious divorce, that in his eyes, his clients believe the relationship between the fair and the county is irretrievably broken. He said he does not believe there's anything the county could do at this point to change their mind. So with that as the backdrop, I'll start with what the fair is asking for. The fair is asking, as I said, to sever the cooperative relationship, to end any agreement that might exist between the county and the fair. They still want us to build a grandstand, but instead of the 3,000 seat grandstand that they asked for in 2018, they would like it just to be a 1,500 seat grandstand. So basically replacing what was torn down when it was deemed unsafe, the old grandstand. If you recall, some of you might recall, when the fair asked for that 3,000 foot or seat grandstand, it was determined that it could not go in the same or similar footprint as the previous grandstand for setbacks and other reasons. So it was moved, and the county has expended significant funds in doing some of the engineering work, and not just for the grandstand itself, but took a look at the fairgrounds as a whole, but specifically the grandstand and the track that the Fair Society asked for. So again, they don't want the 3,000 seat grandstand. They would just like to change it to a 1,500 seat grandstand. They would also like the county to sell the Fair Society the part of the grounds that is currently owned by the fair, or excuse me, by the county, back to the Fair Society for $1. Those statements this morning, or this earlier tonight in public comment, were correct, that it was in the 70s that the Fair Society sold that land to the county for $1, and so they're asking us to sell it back for $1. They are also asking the county to pay an additional $403,000. So in addition to the cost of this 1,500 seat grandstand, they would like a one-time lump sum payment of $403,000, and that would cover operating expenses and other things going forward. And they would also like us to complete certain projects like the admin roof on the admin building. And so that brings us to what I did when I received this letter, because Mr. Norby, Mr. Roberts, and we've been the team working on trying to renegotiate some of the terms of the MOU. And to be honest with you, we were very taken aback and shocked by this particular letter. We had been working with the fair moving forward, including the CUP. And so when we were told they were seeking legal counsel, we thought it was to help them negotiate the MOU. We thought that would be a very good idea. So when we got this letter saying they're not interested in any further negotiations, we were a bit shocked. So one of the things that they asked for in the MOU, or excuse me, in the letter, was that we completed the admin roof. And in their letter, they say that the county denied their request for a new roof. And so I went through the emails, and nothing could be further from the truth. There are emails from Mr. Norby back and forth to Janice, who spoke today at public comment, saying, hey, we've got some quotes for the admin roof. Do you want to seek bids? Do you want us to do that? Working on going forward. And there's quite a bit of back and forth. And so that's just one of the first misstatements in the letter. One of the biggest ones, however, is in the letter, the attorney states that the county and Cedar Corps went before the Plan Commission for the city of St. Croix Falls, unbeknownst to the Fair Society, and without any prior knowledge or any heads up given to the Fair Society. That's what it says in the letter. And this is a complete misstatement. In fact, it was only the Fair Society members who went before the Plan Commission. I have the minutes here of that meeting, and it lists Janice Larson, Carrie Mellon Swanson, Ms. LeBlanc of the Fair Society. There's also emails where Mr. Norby is asking Janice, the president of the Fair Society, I know you went before the Plan Commission. How did that go? And her email back to Mr. Norby was, it went great. The meeting was great. They had a lot of questions for us. We're just looking at how we go forward from here to the city council. And so in that letter, they claimed that we did this in secret, applied for the CUP. In her public comment tonight, she said, well, they had some input, but it was just bits and pieces. And I'm looking here at emails between Cedar Corps and members of the Fair Board, where the Fair Board is outlining exactly what they want. The NTPA tractor pull, they want 2 of those a year, truck pulls, rodeos, mid-scale concerts, circuses. This is not information that the county provided to Cedar Corps. This is information that the Fair Society provided to Cedar Corps. And in addition, there's an email where it says explicitly, I, Janice Larson, president of the Fair Society, give permission for Cedar Corps to approach the Plan Commission with a CUP application on our behalf. In fact, the only reason that the county was involved in any type of CUP application is because the city said, county, since the fairgrounds primarily is owned by the county, we want the owner to sign off on the application. So we simply signed off as the owner, but it was the Fair Society working directly with Cedar Corps applying for the CUP. And we know that there was some issues in the city of St. Croix Falls. Some citizens that live near the fairgrounds were concerned. And so the county did approach the fair. And because we were talking about this sports ag complex, we thought, well, maybe they would want to join with this. And so I don't know, from the letter, it appears that there's a belief by the Fair Society that there was some nefarious plot to take the fairgrounds away and force them to move and join the sports ag complex. And, you know, in all of the meetings I have been to, I can say that that's just simply not true. And so really, I guess at this point, I don't think, because we're in the committee of the whole, I don't think we're looking for any particular action or decision to be made tonight. I wanted to make sure that you had context of this letter before you just received the letter, because there are a lot of allegations that if you take them on face value, make it seem like the county has not been a fair partner in this negotiation. And, you know, in my experience throughout the last several years, we've been actively working with the Fair Society. Mr. Roberts has offered to help with a business plan. The goal of this new MOU is to make sure that the fair has longevity, you know, so that the fair is operated in a manner that long-term they will be around, especially when the county is looking at investing millions of dollars and making sure that this is something where they're going to last. And I know that there's some folks who feel like the Fair Society members, they're not business people, they just love the fair. And I think that that's very true and a very good point. There needs to be somebody involved that has that business acumen so that they can be sustainable. And I think that's what the county wanted, to join with the fair and be that long-term partner. I don't know, as far as a policy, what this board will ultimately decide on the asks, what the Fair Society is recommending. But what I would recommend tonight is that when you're out of committee of the whole, you refer this back to the General Government Committee or Executive Committee, or both probably would be the most appropriate, so that they can look at this more closely. We can look at everything more closely and make some perhaps suggestions to the full county board at the next month.
So I'm sure we have a few questions. Go ahead and start, Mr. Demling.
Problem I got with this whole thing and with the whole county in general is they never follow through on stuff. And I consider this with Deb, when she did nothing for that fair. None of the buildings were taken care of, and that was part of the county's purpose, is to take care of these buildings, and they just let them run down. And everybody I've talked to wants that fairground there. And I am 100% with just having a fair there and a grandstand.
Any other questions? Supervisor Rowdy.
Not sure if this is
Or statement.
it's a question at the end, but it's a statement. And I'm a proponent of the fair. I have been for a long time, 55 years. I used to be in 4-H and go to the fair and show dogs. And I also wired at the fair for years. There was a storm that went through and took down all the overhead wires. We put them all back up. We tried to rewire some of the buildings so they were safer. And then one time I talked to Dana. There was a comment. I'm all in favor of the letter, not the email part, because I don't know anything about that. But I talked to Dana up in the hall by his office, and I was asking him about the grandstand, replacement of the grandstand. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about that. We got $1 million put away for the building of a new grandstand." Then we had another negotiation upstairs, the next one upstairs. And the fair board was there. They had diagrams of the new grandstand. And there was discussion back and forth about what they were going to do. And this was all with Dana. It wasn't shortly after that he retired. Well, then we got to go with Jeff Peavy. So everything has changed now to this new board or new administration. So I was at the demolition of the grandstand. It was get up in the morning, go down there and watch a big track go tear it down. And I've taken one of the rides every year since I've been a supervisor. And I guess I would like to ask, and my question now is, and it's a little tricky, but we got Chad here, we got the administrator, we got Belia there. Have they taken the ride or visited the fair? You could raise your hand and let me know.
I've been at the fair, during the fair.
I came here in August of 2018, and that's the first thing my family and I did.
I just think we should take a big look, because this is a big loss for our county. We lose it.
I've been at the fair every year since I've been here, since 2018.
And last year was the COVID, so they didn't have.
So why do you think we're losing it? Where did that come
I
from?
get that's my
Oh,
personal opinion,
okay.
because I see it coming.
Sure, that we're losing it. Okay,
Yes.
John,
I was on the representatives of the fair before Steve got appointed. And there's so many things that Janice said there that I know we just about did a complete wiring. Remember when that happened, Tracy? And I know when it used to be in charge of the Parks and Recreation, we could not get any money. She was the administrator, wasn't that true? I believe it was Yunker that had about a $700,000 contract for wiring. And
70.
And there was times, when you get to a certain point, well, this was all that was allotted for in the bid. So they had to stop there. And things were deteriorated past that. Fair Board put in a lot of money. I
Supervisor Warndall.
Well, Leo was talking about me, about when I talked about the people that love the fair and all that. So I'm gonna make my same statement I made at the meeting, executive meeting. People that are on this fair are volunteers, not doctors, they're not lawyers, they're not business people, they're just volunteers. Their wives, husbands, and farmers, whatever. But they don't have any business background. They just want to put on a fair for the citizens of Polk County, and especially the kids. It'll be the highlight of their year. My grandson, 2 years ago, got grand champion corn. Okay, he grew the tallest corn in Polk County. He was so energized when he did that this year we bought our own planter. He was on his hands and knees checking the depth. He was on his hands and knees checking the spacing. That blue ribbon energized him to do better in life. I think every one of those ribbons down there do. Every single ribbon they give on that fair has a family attached to it. They all helped and devoted their time to make sure that kid did the best they could. When I go down there and watch my grandkids, they're in seventh heaven. When I told them the fair wasn't going to be this year, they both cried. They're not kids, young men. So in our deliberations here, I think we should remember what that fair is all about for the people of Polk County and the citizens, especially the children. And if anybody here thinks that there wasn't some interference with this process, we're in for a rude awakening. There was interference in this process.
Typically,
Don went and visited the city for 3.5 hours and talked to them about, out of that meeting, we were gonna move it. And can you imagine these people thought when they're devoted their life to running this fair, and all of a sudden secondhand they hear, well, we're gonna move it now. They didn't know nothing about it. Don, bless your heart, he was probably down there trying to do some good, but that's interference. The other thing is, they got people that are willing to testify that county board members are out there saying to this day, they're gonna sell that fairground.
The only basic thing I talked to the administrator about was the people that live along that road that were were talking about decibels for noise. That's the only thing I never talked to him about moving. And he said, John, he said, I'm on the same page as you are, as keeping the fair here. But he said, I don't have the votes in the council. He said, that's what he urged the people to do, is speak to their people that were on the council. Because he said they didn't care about the fair, and he was as worried as I.
I'm not gonna sit here and give names, but they have names. They have citizens in the community that are willing to come forward and say, this was said to me. If that isn't undermining the fair, what is? I mean, those poor people, they don't know what the heck's going on. They don't know if their grounds are gonna be there for them. I mean, I sit around once a month with all them people that are good people, primarily care about the fair. They're not all this business here, you know? I think we should, in the end, we're gonna do something for them, I would hope. Why don't we look at this letter and just say, I guess we're getting by pretty good. Maybe we better bail out, give it back to them.
Hey, Fran?
Sure, I just had a couple of comments. I mean, I don't know how things got to the point that they're at, how they disintegrated and got to that point or not. You know, I do know, you know, like anything else, you know, when they compare it to a bad divorce, well, it always takes two, you know, so to speak. Maybe the people on the fair board, and I don't know a lot of them real well. I'm acquainted with a couple of them. You know, maybe they're not business people, but they're not stupid, and they should be treated with respect and courtesy. And I'm assuming that they have been treated that way, because I know everybody wants to treat people the way they would like to be treated, but apparently they don't feel that way. And maybe there's, you know, something about that maybe needs to be rethought, and the approach a little bit too.
Richard?
I'd like the second comments that are being made here. I think the fair is a wonderful asset, and I tell people, you go up to the 4-H barns, you see the kids who are there with their animals, and I know they're not all angels or anything like that, but they're scrubbed and they're looking happy and smiles on their faces. They say an hour away down in the Twin Cities, people are shooting each other on the streets. I said, what a contrast. I have heard my neighbors in St. Croix Falls, and I live very close to Fairgrounds, saying that they treasure the rural aspect of that community. And they don't want to see some big, different sort of events coming in there, changing the nature of the fairgrounds as it's been for over a century. I guess it's coming up on 150 years. Maybe it already has been down in East Farmington originally. And I think these people put in thousands of volunteer hours. They do just a lot of things. And I think we should be giving our wholehearted support. I'm sorry, very sorry to see this happen. We did have I was on that committee back, I don't know if it's 2017 or something. There were 3 or 4 of us. I think we only met a couple of times when we're starting to talk about the grants and so on. But, I think that we should, number one, have a good discussion with the people on the fair board if they want their attorney along or whatever. But the other thing is, I realized fairly recently that the fairgrounds have been transferred to the county for $1 back in 1976, I think it was. A lot of the buildings were there at that time. The Fair Societies put in a lot of money on the fairgrounds. I think the highest budgetary amount that we put in was we approved $75,000 for electrical wiring. And the Fair Board didn't get reimbursed for $75,000. They may not have spent that entire amount. But and it would be interesting to have a chart of how much money the county has put in. But you look at some of these buildings, and the grandstand was a 1909 or 1916 historic building. Osceola has their historic ballpark, and there were a lot of people who were very, very sad to see that grandstand demolished. But in any event, I think we ought to do everything we can to see if there's any basis at all on which to reconcile. And if there isn't, I think we ought to set the Fair Society in a position where they can go on running the fair and do their very best to make it a success in the years ahead. And I would fully support that.
So then does it become the St. Croix Falls Fair? Because it's the Polk County Fair, and people from the whole county should be involved in it. And it's a shame the way it looks. I mean, it's embarrassing. I drive by it at least 2 times a day, and those buildings are, I mean, there's no long-term maintenance plan. There's no short-term maintenance plan. I mean, you got people, I had somebody call me the other day and say, is it okay if we paint the schoolhouse? I sent them to you, Tracy. Because, you know, people want to make it look better. And I think as a county, I'd hate to see it go. I think we need to make a commitment to the fair. I don't agree that we should sign off on this agreement. You know, I think there needs to be more discussion, dialogue between that to get to a mutual agreement. But I'm not in favor of signing off and giving it to the city of St. Croix Falls or the fairground or the fair board and let them run it on their own. Because it's the county fair. It's not just the St. Croix Falls Fair.
Amy?
So I think I want to echo a little bit of what Steve talked about, the importance that the fair plays, I think, in our kids. I was in 4-H with my kids, and it was just great to see they had to show up on time. They had to present in front of a judge. They had to go to a place. And that's a big deal for 8, 10, 12, 15-year-old kids. And they have this forum to do it in, and this organized, structured way that they can participate. And then the judges would give them feedback, and they would learn from it, yada, yada, yada. So I feel like it's a very important part of our community, and I think it's something we need to fight like hell to keep. And I share Fran's question as a new person. I'm kind of like scratching my head, how did we get here? And it seems like we haven't done enough to support it and provide the maintenance, and even buckets of paint are missing, you know. So I'm very concerned about how we got here and why we're here and what we can do to repair it. And then I think the other piece that's going on out there that I get a lot of questions on is like, is the fair being taken over by this ag complex? And I always get this, and then I have to say, well, it's sort of work in progress. So I think there's sort of a loss. I don't know exactly how to say this, but there's sort of like, we could be putting energy into the fair, but we've taken this other track and we're trying to put a bunch of energy into something that's used up our time and staff time. And I feel like we should hit the fair a lot, you know, firm it up, make it happen, make it top notch, and then come up for air, or maybe those two partners. I mean, why can't we have a top rate equestrian center at the fairgrounds? Or, you know, I mean, I just see so many ways of partnering and opportunities, but I just share sort of Steve's sentiments as a parent and as a member of this community, and I think we should fight like hell to keep that fair.
Last comment. In answering your questions there, they buy their own mower, they mow the grass and have a tractor there, they work the grounds with. Everything else down there is volunteer. They get work days together. They're just getting back on their feet from COVID. They couldn't have work days, you know, and have people working with COVID going on. And I heard the other day about the horse arena. I went in there today and looked at it, man. They've been using it for 2 weeks. There's nothing wrong with that horse arena. Need some weed whipping? Yeah. So when I asked somebody about that, they said, well, we haven't had a chance to organize a weed whipping crew yet. It's all volunteer. But the county's so concerned about the way the place looks. Get somebody down there to fix it up. It's a county park.
Well, that's my
We're gonna go look at a county park that's been all redone. They're coming up. We forgot about that county park. That's a county park. The resolution says that's a county park.
But it's
Okay.
putting plans together so that you know, this year we're gonna do the roofs on these buildings, this year we're gonna do this, then we know what it's about, everything's planned for, it's budgeted for, and it's done.
Major
Instead,
stuff, but the other stuff is all volunteer. Just remember that.
And Warren, your comment about, oh, it's cleaned up now. I made that comment. I drove into the fair about 2 weeks ago. Like I said, we were talking about the MOU. And 2 weeks ago, I drove into the fair just to check it out. We were moving a house down there, so I drove in, the gate was open. I went in there and just looked at the fair because we got that letter, just to see what it was like. From equestrian perspective, where we're being asked to participate and we want more equestrian. I sat in a lot of the meetings, and I'm not gonna make a comment because I can certainly give you a perspective that would probably be different than some of the other people made tonight, but I'm not gonna go down that road. Because I sat in the meetings with the Fair Society, with staff, while we developed this whole concept. You know what? That's water under the bridge. Let's move forward. But when an equestrian guy goes down to that fairgrounds and he sees all the other grass mowed and weed whipped, everything around there looked nice. But you go to the horse arena, there was weeds as high as your belt, and the practice arena had a patch of grass growing in it, half the size of this room, and the ropes and the fences were down. So as a person that has gone to the fair, 4-H, and I've watched my grandchildren get ribbons too, and it's just as important to me, and I sit out there all day supporting that. I spent a lot of money on my grandkids to go to the fair to get that ribbon. When I go see the property looking the way it did, when everything else is looking nice, clearly as an equestrian guy, that was a problem. So I want to put that in context.
I can respect that. Same time, we're at the end.
If they needed help and they can't take care of the horse property, or someone on their staff who's supposed to do it, if I would have got a phone call, hey, it's COVID. And I asked if I could use the fairgrounds last year with equestrian. I was told no. If someone would have said, hey, our weeds are getting high, we have no one to help. Chris, you know anyone that I will come down and drag that arena. If that's what it was going to look like 2 weeks ago, I would have come down and dragged that arena myself. So it's a two-way street on that issue.
For the record, there's been an event at that arena every day for the last 2 weeks.
So I hit it the day
You just
before
happened
that.
to get there. These
year after
volunteers are
that.
playing catch up. You know, and they lost their tractor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of circumstances.
I know there is.
You know,
I know.
there's a lot of stuff. I mean,
There
it
is.
isn't just,
there's a very vocal group in St. Croix Falls that does not want that fairgrounds there too, just so you know. I mean, they have sent letters to us. I walk the track there a lot, and they catch me when I'm walking the track, and you know, you got it coming in both ears because they're very vocal about not wanting that fairgrounds there. I don't know how big the group is, but I know that it's out there.
Now, Mike, you gotta wait a minute.
If I could,
No, wait a minute. Let everyone else go before you go twice. Brad.
So I agree with most everything that's been said here, other than the fact that these individuals on the fair aren't business people. Because they're maybe not business people, but in agriculture today, if you're the largest agriculture in Polk County or the smallest agriculture in Polk County, it's business. It's run like a business. And so there is business people on there. You know, the businesses of running the fair is different than the business of running your farm. It's still business. So there is business people on there with business heads that do know, I believe, do know what they're doing. My kids were in 4-H, my grandkids are in 4-H. My daughter probably still has more fun at the fair than my grandson does. I'm not really sure who got us into this mess or how we got there. But when I read this legal letter, it reminds me of my 4-year-old grandson saying, I want ice cream before dinner. Too bad for you. Eat dinner or get no ice cream. So both sides just get back at the table, get over yourselves, sit in a room, figure it out and move on. Because it's both sides holding up the process. And if one side isn't willing to meet, we're never gonna move forward. So sit down, make it happen. I don't care. Put it on tape, put it on WebEx, make it public meetings. I don't care what it takes. Sit down at the table and make it happen. Both sides are, one side is as guilty as the other. And if one side isn't willing to come to the table, then that becomes their problem. And then one question, in 2018, who asked, whose proposal was it for the 3,000 seat grandstand? I don't know.
Malia, could you answer that?
That was the request made by the Fair Society at that time.
Thank you.
And I could say too, you know, yes, I want to see it move forward. But, you know, I believe the leadership now that has signed off on this letter to have their attorney write to us. One of the concerns I have is that we do it in general government or form an opinion. This is a county board issue, clearly. I don't think this should be a general government issue. This is too big. It touches too many of us. And I've sat in the committees. We've had it on the agenda, Fair Society, for many months. Russ can agree to that. We had multiple meetings. And I know the Fair Society showed up a few times and kind of were taken back a little bit that they were there and they thought they were going to be able to talk, and the discussion went, they didn't get asked. So I do know that the times where you guys were there, Tracy, I mean, we've had lots of discussions about that. How do we help you guys improve your fair? How do we make you successful? And the fair said, we need these ideas to be successful. Like Malia said, they put the list together of all the things they wanted. And the county said, fine, you want us to fund that. We have to have more than a handshake. And the county committee said that because for years we asked the question, well, how do you know you guys can do all these events? Well, we can because we've always done them. So the committees that were dealing with this said, and the staff, attorneys and administrator back to Dana Fry, clear down to now Vince, I think clearly you want to protect the county and say, if we're going to be the banker and we're going to give you $2 million, and we know it probably needs another million or two over the next 10 or 20 years, it's a huge investment. Let's just make sure that what you guys want to do as a fair society and a fair board, that you're going to be able to do it without the city politics changing every 2 years with the wind. All of a sudden, one day you guys want to have an event and they're like, oh, time out, you can't do that. You never got permission. So that's why the county board and the committee suggested for the fair society to go to the city. You know, Dale Wood did a great job for many, many years running that fair. It was always on a handshake. So it wasn't too much for the board to ask. Go get an agreement in place with the city. Once you have that agreement, which you know you can do, the intent was always to fund the projects. But we needed to have a commitment. And I was in those meetings. I heard that, and I know that was the intent of the thing. One of the things I've asked to do is I've asked the administrator to maybe let's take a pause in this sports ag complex, because if that's confusing the issue, let's just take a pause in it for a few months, right? They could still talk behind the scenes. Communities have came to the county and asked about it. So let's just take a pause. But I believe, as the county board chair, that I don't know how you get the same group of people as leadership of the Fair Society to come back to try to now negotiate after they've said this. One of the things I would suggest is you keep this in committee of the whole, and that the Fair Society reaches out to other individuals who sit down with the county committee of the whole, and we get new people involved. So if that's the issue, that we didn't like the original parks director, they're gone now, and we don't like the way Mo did it, we don't like the way Chad did it, we don't like the way Malia did it, we don't like the 2 or 3 administrators the way they've done it. So basically the Fair Society says, we don't like the way anyone from the county's done anything. We don't trust them. Sure, it's a two-way street. So let's take the county administration out of it, and let's take the existing fair board people out of it, the 3 people, and get someone new to come to the county and work this out would be the best thing, I would think. So I don't know what the next thing is because I personally don't know that we should do anything. Leah, could you address the legality of the MOU? And if the Fair Society says the MOU is over in this letter, do we have an MOU right now with the Fair Society?
So as was stated previous, there was the original MOU from the 70s. That was redone in 2003, and now we reopened it to try to redo it now with this large investment. And so when we asked to reopen it and both sides came to the table, we started renegotiating. That's the moment when this MOU, the current MOU, while some of the provisions, of course, would still arguably be enforceable, we were actively renegotiating. So it was reopened. I think there was some confusion at the committee level. When this MOU was drafted, there is no termination clause. So there's no, most contracts, if somebody does, breaches the contract, it can be terminated, or it can be terminated with advance notice of, so many days, months, or years. There's nothing within the current MOU that says how it's terminated. So that doesn't mean it can't be terminated. And by this letter, they've put us on notice that any part of that MOU that may have been enforceable, they're no longer willing to comply with. So they're noticing of us that they are going to breach whatever obligations they had. They also outline reasons why they think we've already breached. But I don't want to get into that without going into a closed session if we were going to get into some of those nitty gritty legal arguments. But I do think that the policy question is the bigger question, setting the legalities and, contract law aside. Is there a way to have the two sides come back together? And I'm perfectly willing to reach out myself to this attorney and see if he can speak with his clients, or I can have someone else from my office, Mr. Loso, if we think that maybe just some new personalities might have some impact, and see if, based upon some of the things that were already discussed today, maybe they would be willing to come back to the table.
So how does the board, I don't know if it's a consensus, raise of hands, how does the board want to go forward? That's the question. Joe, you're saying keep it in the committee of the whole. Yes. All right. Fran, you're saying the same thing. Jay?
Oh, I don't think that's an appropriate motion.
It's not
At this time, Malia's has already indicated that there isn't much we can do until we can negotiate. If we don't have anybody to negotiate with, we have to come up with a completely different approach to the fair. And I think everybody is an advocate of the fair, basically. Basically every citizen is. So until Malia can come to us and say, well, now we've got something to negotiate. I mean, right now they're stonewalling and saying, we don't want to talk to you, we're out, that's it, so long. Well, that's what we should be considering. If she can't make a move on that, we've got to consider what we're going to do to salvage a fair with a new society. There's no other option. We can't work with them. They're out.
Right, and that's how I see it too, is they're out. They're saying they don't want to negotiate.
The only other option would be give them the fair.
For $1, what we paid for it or whatever.
Same thing.
Sure. Mike?
A few minutes ago, I wanted to respond to Supervisor Kelly comment about residents not wanting to have the fair. I close to a lot of those people, and I physically and living in the community. And I, to a person, I've heard no one say they have a problem with the fair. In fact, they welcome having the fair there. I think it was the attention was focused on what events, in addition to the fair itself and the fair events that are currently being, fairgrounds events that are currently being conducted would occur. And somehow or other, the $1.3 million resolution that the full board passed in the discussion or planning got escalated to $2 million. I don't think we ever discussed or voted on any number under the, other than the one resolution of $1.3 million a couple.
So I can explain to you, Mike. That resolution was based on Dale Wood gave us a proposal on what they thought a new grandstand would cost the way it was. Dale Wood is no longer the president. I sat in meetings with Cedar Corp where the fair board said, like Malia outlined, the letter that got sent to the city was from the fair board on all these events they wanted to do. And that's how they were justifying the 3,000 seat grandstand. So when it went from 1,500 seat to 3,000 and the infrastructure that it would take to put that there, those were the budgets that they gave us that. There's no way $1 million. Well, let me finish. Oh, you can comment back, but you need the facts. They told us that the $1.3 million would not be enough. So it would have to be clearly much higher than that. And with all the cross connection issues, stormwater project that has to be regraded, the site for the stormwater, the street issues, that the project would be clearly pushing $2 million. And that's when the fair said, we will throw in a big chunk of money, like 400 grand. I can't remember the exact number, 300. And the fair said, we will help fund that. So that's where the number grew from.
Point I was going to make, not so much how the $2 million evolved.
Well, you said I don't know how it evolved.
No.
Mike, you said I don't know how it evolved. I just told you how it evolved.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that this county board never voted on anything for $2 million, to my knowledge.
No, we said we needed, we said we needed a new.
Just finish for 1 minute. I've got about 1 or 2 more sentences. To me, it's like a dog chasing its tail, that we need a bigger
Yes.
Arena and more events so we can pay for the arena and
Right.
more events.
Correct. And that's what the city and the people that came to our committees from the community said. We were worried about the fair expanding and having all these other events to pay for it. That was the issue. And that's where we have people.
Yeah, that is in response to Supervisor.
Yeah, okay.
I wanted to
Thanks,
say
Doug.
that I don't think the residents are against.
Well, they showed up and they
fair
told us
in
they
any
were
sense
against
per
it.
se.
They did show up and say they were against it. Doug?
I want to go back to a comment made, and you asked me where it was coming from.
Yeah.
About working toward the end.
Yeah.
Because I just heard a comment that said, well, we'll negotiate with them, but otherwise we'll have to get somebody else. There is nobody else. As Wade, Steve said, these are all volunteers, and they've been volunteers for a long time. So there isn't this group sitting out there saying, can we take over?
No, I don't think that was the question. It was like the Fair Society has a board of directors and a Fair Society, right?
Right.
How many people are involved in the fair board and society?
20.
20. We've had 2 or 3 people, the same 2 or 3 people come to our meetings, and they're the ones that basically generated the letter. They're the ones that say we want it to be over with. So all I was suggesting is sometimes when something's not working, which I heard in this group, maybe someone else should show up and help figure out how to get this resolved.
Absolutely, I agree.
That's all I'm saying. And if the 3 people that are upset that talked tonight, they got a problem with the county and everyone that's been involved. It's just amazing that our county does such a good job. I have so much respect for Chad, Vince, Malia, Mo. And this fair board now is slamming, they slammed the last person that dealt with them, and now they're slamming all the people now that are dealing with them. We got to find someone we can negotiate with. And if it's not them, who is it on the fair board that's going to step up and try to find a way to resolve this? Otherwise, it's like Jay said, Well, then if there's nothing there, what do we do as a county? So I'm not saying go out and find some new entity. I totally support the fair. I want to see the fair be successful. 100%, I'm behind the fair. But doing it this way, to negotiate, Dan, go ahead.
I've just sat, and listened, and I participated in the fair myself for 20 years, and I continue to invest in the fair with the tractors they talked about and the volunteers and all the things that go along with that. Doesn't appear to me like there's one person in this room that doesn't support the fair. So I can't understand how we got to this point that we can't just sit down and figure this out. So can we appoint 2 or 3 members of this board to go meet with the fair board or the fair society and listen and come back with something to the board to even talk about? Because I obviously didn't know anything about it till we got this letter, but I don't like that. I can tell you, I don't like a letter like that. That's a threat. That's not what we're about or anybody else is about. We want to fix it. It's a good thing. It's a thing that needs to be done. How do we go back to the mill, back to the well, and figure out how to sit down and figure it out?
Steve?
No, I think you're on track here, but no outside influence, no outside rumors. You know, everybody let it settle now. Okay. Don't go if they come and say I need a 1,500. No, wait a minute. Now you got to think about future. You know, you don't want to think small. You know, let them figure out what they want and have somebody listen instead of trying to tell them, no, you know, and then see what the revenue is and see what the expenditures are. You're running an operation that size.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But, you know, there was all kinds of outside influences coming into this thing, both on the fair board side and the county side. And, you know, this NHPA track, food pulling track, you know,
I think that came from the county board, or you think that came from?
that came from one member that was on the fair board that kind of had this big idea.
Sure.
That's not there no more.
Okay.
And the big idea is not there no more. Now we got people just thinking, what do we need? You know,
But
I think we should get-
Supervisor Warrendale, did you hear the letter though, the email that they sent to the condition? This was only 3 months ago to the city of St. Croix Falls, where the Fair Society filled out that application and they were the ones that put that on there. They did it. They put on the NTPA poll. No one forced them to do that. That was their choice.
I didn't understand that was on there.
It was on there, correct, Malia?
What I was referring to was the email from their society member to Cedar Core saying, here's a list of things we want to do in our CUP, and that included the NTPA track. I don't have a copy of the original CUP application to know whether that was on the application. I believe it was. I believe that was one of the big concerns of the community, was that because of the noise of tractor pulls of that size.
Well, I think it's time both sides come together and talk it over.
And I think that's the consensus here. It's how do we do it? And that's where I don't know that we keep doing the same people on both sides is we're going to get somewhere. So, Brad.
So, and maybe I took Mike's comments wrong here in the end, but problem becomes if somebody's going to spend a boatload of money at the end of the day here, the county, the Fair Society, we're going to spend 1.3, the fair is going to throw in 400,000. But it seems as though the residents of St. Croix Falls want it to be the same as it was 100 years ago. But fair needs some way to generate that 400,000. The county needs some way to hopefully get a little bit of that 1.3 million back. And so if the citizens of St. Croix Falls are gonna balk at saying, oh, there's one extra tractor pull, there's an extra truck pull. Oh, no, they had 2 horse pulls this year, you know, outside of the fair. If you spend that kind of money in business, you need to generate some income to pay for it. And that's how you do it. Yeah, you do it by having an extra tractor pull, an extra truck pull. And okay, so it's noisy in St. Croix Falls 4 nights a year instead of 2 nights a year. I don't know, because it's things change, fair has to change. The fair has changed over the last 100 years. It'll change in the next 15 years. But if St. Croix Falls is just going to come out and say, well, it has to be exactly the way it's been for the last 100, it's pretty tough to deal with that moving forward, not just for the fair, for the county, for all involved.
All right, so, John,
Just a point of interest, how we got here, and I see a couple of things that you gotta consider, is originally I was a 4-H member, and 5 kids were all in 4-H. And I always was there, and there was a county agent, a Man County agent, a Omak County agent, that they took care of the fair. And they were the liaison between the county board, and it was growth and everything was taken care of. The ag committee, until we went to this central government, we always had an ag committee, and there were 2 farmer advisors on that ag committee. And ag has completely been eliminated, and 4-H and everything is involved around, that seems to come from rural, and that was always what made it go. Well, then the agent is gone, the ag committees are gone. We're trying to start a ag business group, just as an advisory. And those are the things that we get more input. The Fair Society has a board of directors. What is there, about 20 people on the board of directors, and 1 from each entity, and they're advised a lot by them. So there is a huge amount of input in business and the other thing. And I think what spurred the big idea of the bigger complex, the 3,000, I thought of, and Tracy, you and I said on both of them, and I thought that was all spurred and come to the table by Cedar Corporation. I never heard of anybody on that Fair Society talk about that 3,000 grandstand and the whole redesign of the fair. And there was some input from the city then about the draw through and everything, and everything seemed to be going all right. Well, probably maybe what's happening with the COVID and some of them things the last, maybe everybody's rethinking everything. But Cedar Corporation, I see the Fair Society getting blamed for the increase in expenditures and everything.
hey, John, I gotta be clear with you. It wasn't Cedar Corp that proposed the NTPA track in 3,000 seat. I sat in the meetings. It was not them.
There was, like Steve said, there was one guy
From the Fair Society.
Yeah.
It wasn't,
But Cedar Corp took it from there and designed everything.
because I sat in the meetings when it was told that that's what they wanted. That's what they wanted the design to be. It wasn't the county doing that.
I didn't hear
I sat in
anybody
those-
on the,
Maybe they've changed their mind and you haven't heard it, but I want to make sure the facts are right. That's not, Cedar Corp was asked to inventory the property and to look at what the Fair Society wanted to do. And that list that Malia referred to, and I sat in the meetings, we talked about a horse barn. We had a meeting out at the fairgrounds. The Fair Society invited different groups. We sat out there for about 4 hours one day, I think. And they brought in different groups. And we had some equestrian young kids show up. And I mean, I was very excited that in the beginning of this process that, hey, the fair was going to pull in the equestrian kids.
and their obligation was vision.
Yeah, envision, and what are we going to look at the future? And I was very excited about the equestrian stuff. And then the NTPA track, and I was excited about the big, I was totally supporting of the big grandstand. You could have concerts, bigger events, music events, rodeos. I thought it was a great idea. And then someone pulled the pin and said, we're not going to do that. And now this whole thing is falling apart. Now, one of the things, this has to get resolved. So I don't know, unless someone tells me this should go back to committee. If there's a consensus here before we get out of this committee of the whole, that, like Supervisor Rooks talked about and Steve talked about, is Is there a new group of people here that are neutral? I'm not neutral anymore. I'm part of the team. I thought I was neutral, but I'm not. I was for helping you guys move forward and get your plans done. Now, clearly, I'm not comfortable after I see this or whatever letter it is, because I believe exactly what Malia said. Half the stuff they put in this is not accurate. It's a threat. It's a total threat. And someone changed their mind and they're trying to blame someone else for whatever politics are being done at the fairgrounds. So I shouldn't be in it. I don't believe any staff should be in it. But somehow, if we're going to salvage this, then we should find a way. Fran?
I was just gonna say,
Go, Joe, you go first.
no, I was just gonna say, okay, as a means to do something to move forward, they proposed a 3-person committee, have Malia contact their attorney with that, I want to call it an olive branch or whatever, with a new 3-person committee to represent the county and see if there is a response to that. Now, just sitting here tonight, listening to everybody talk, I think a good person for that would be Steve. Nick Doug is another person who would be good. I think there's other people in this room who would be good too. I don't know if there's like any volunteers, if, there's people who, Chris, like you said, who think, maybe you want to back away from this right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anybody, who wants to step forward, but to make a proposal. The proposal may be shot down, but I think to show good faith on the county's part to move forward with something along those lines.
So can we keep working on that avenue then? Let's get off of talking about all the stuff that we don't agree with. We don't like the letter. Joe, go ahead.
Is there a grandfather in on this noise ordinance?
Grandfather on noise ordinance?
Yes,
Did he say Great Falls? You mean?
for with the city of St. Croix Falls.
You'd have to ask them. I doubt there's a grandfather for a noise ordinance.
Because I know it's the same way with, we had complaints in the township about farmers spread manure by the houses and that. And the township said, who was here first? The other thing.
Would have thought St. Croix would have said that.
Yeah, and the other thing I would like to see happen is get the right wording on who said the 3,000 seating versus the
We
15.
have it in email. We know who said it. Steve?
Just so these meetings, where, whatever happens, somebody's there, can we have our clerk come and take minutes?
Right.
Because we don't know who said what, when, and how, and emails, and did you get that? I
Maybe
didn't
it should
get
be
that,
right here.
Yeah, I
Maybe we could
mean,
have an ad hoc committee. If that's what I'm hearing, I don't know, Jay, I truly do look for guys that have been around the block. And I like the idea of maybe creating an ad hoc committee where it's a couple supervisors and they sit with the clerk. Our clerk could be there, take minutes of it. It's an official meeting. It can be done right here in this room. And maybe Malia, if we come out of closed session, we could make that recommendation that you draft a letter to that attorney suggesting this idea of us having a neutral group of supervisors. Just try to see if they draft a letter to their attorney saying, we'd like to have a meeting. Fran, I don't know exactly how you proposed it, but what you said I thought was a good idea. Jay?
I think what's gonna happen, Leah's gonna find a little different reception from that firm. And I think we're gonna get a little feedback as to the misrepresentation that they've been given in order to make a decision to hire an attorney to give us this, to write this letter. And I think we'll find that Malia will be able to negotiate some form of agreement that we can get together and formulate something that's acceptable to both parties.
So leave it a little more open-ended with Malia is what you're proposing.
I think it'll happen.
because there's more people, you say 20 people on that committee. I'll guarantee you, they took this letter that we received verbatim. And as Malia pointed out, very justifiably, and accurately, that that's not good information. They were functioning under poor advice. I don't know that particular attorney, I know his boss, but we'll get some movement on this. And I think talking about 3,000, 1,000 noise, you get into stuff that, look, we can spend days doing that before we even know if we got anything to talk about. Or somebody to talk with.
Gotcha. Brad?
I agree with Jay. I mean, for one thing, we need to know if they're willing to come to the table through our lawyer and their lawyer. If they're unwilling to come to the table, it doesn't matter if we have 3 people who are 5 or whatever the number is, who are willing to sit down. And I think, hopefully the Fair Board has heard it loud and clear tonight that the county board is behind them.
Right, okay.
But we need to meet,
Consider a citizen also, like if we only have 2 supervisors that are willing, is there a 3rd or 4th?
Well, now we're hearing different
I know.
opinion.
We go with the group, maybe add a citizen.
Fran, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't know, if it would make a difference to them if they know moving forward who from the county they're gonna be dealing with. If that is going to make a difference between their attorney and our attorney.
But how about if we take
I don't
Jay's position, we come out of this, that we do give Malia guidance to draft that letter to say the county board thinks she's heard enough, that we're willing to put 3 neutral supervisors involved. General government, we've been dealing with this, Russ can tell you, we've been dealing with the Fair Board for years on general government. And, we've heard it all. So personally, I don't think anyone from general government should be in that. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, we can put 3 people on it, but we are not giving, the county board is still going to 15 supervisors in the end. So I say, Malia's extended the olive branch already. Ask them to meet, ask is there anything we can do. If the answer is no, we're not extending another branch. We extended it. I say the ball's in their court. If they want to talk, they need to come and talk. If they don't, we got some tough decisions to make. And we're gonna make them. I don't mind 3 supervisors going in and representing us, but it is a committee. It is not, they are not going in there making deals for the county board. No, but so they go in there and, they have all this wonderful talk and yet it comes back here. And yeah, it's a mess, no doubt about it, but it's been a mess for a long time. Way before the grandstand, way before when I got on the county board, it was a mess. And it's still a mess.
One simple question, if somebody may know the answer. Does the Fair Society have bylaws? Are they functioning under bylaws?
They write their own, where they are.
Well, do they have, the bylaws are,
Bylaws.
they must have some.
They are a 501c3 nonprofit. So they would have something, and it's probably with the state, or we could ask them for a copy. I could ask the attorney for a copy. I think having had this discussion today, I can certainly even just make a phone call to the attorney, assure him that there is significant support, and ask them for their ideas on if there is a way that we could somehow come back together, and maybe ask them if there are certain board members that they would be comfortable with, obviously neutral board members that they would be comfortable with, and just see what he says. He could very much, he might even watch this video. I did send him the invite both to the committee meetings and to the county board and invited him to watch and let him know that if he wasn't able to watch, that they are recorded and eventually posted. So, you know, once he gets a chance to view this, or if I summarize it for him, you know, maybe that will shift things. And I think that would be a good first step.
We had enough discussion. Sharon, one more thing.
Malia, has the attorney that sent this seen the information about that you guys have put together that dispute what's said in the letter?
It was, right, it was communicated. I haven't sent him copies or put together a packet. I can certainly do that. You know, I did let him, he did say this was one of those letters where, you know, the client was really provided all of the information. And so, you know, he was just communicating the information that was provided to him. You know, he seemed like a very reasonable person, and I think reaching out to him might be a good idea.
All right, so there's consensus. We're gonna let Malia then just reach out to him. And I know we can't take any action in here, but is there consensus that when we go into open session, that's gonna be what we say? And then Malia will come back to the committee of the whole. Russ?
Point of order, we're not. in session.
No, we're in
Committee.
of the whole, excuse me. Committee of the whole.
We don't really need to report anything. No,
We don't have,
no.
it's out there. But we don't need to take any action when we come out of committee of the whole. Sure. Is there a motion to, what else do we got in committee of the whole? Do we have anything else? That was it? Okay, do we got a motion to reconvene? We have a second? All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Discussion and possible actions on agenda items, standing committee agenda items, and proposed resolution ordinances acted by standing committees. Number 17, environmental services, ordinance number 2421, ordinance to enact amend Polk County Comprehensive Land Use Ordinance. We have a motion?
I'll move.
Tim and Jay. Further discussion?
Jason here.
Yeah.
Did you say 16A and B? We were talking about both of them, or I want to make a motion on B.
Okay, so we're gonna take A by itself, then 17 by itself. A. A, we're gonna do by itself. Then 17B, you wanna make a motion to amend it?
Like to send it back to committee.
Okay. Okay, so 17A. We made a, we're gonna, that's what you just made a motion in a second to discuss it. Do we want, is there any discussion about it? By supervisors? Chair?
Did tie both together? Sends me back, will it hold up? Hey.
Megan, you can do either one, but the issue,
You gotta amend the resolution.
the reason why both ordinances are on the agenda is for consistency purposes. The proposed amendments to the bunkhouse text would be the same in the shoreline and the comprehensive. Same thing with fences. So it wouldn't make sense to adopt one and not adopt the other, just for consistency and going through the whole county ordinance, in my opinion. So, the boathouse language, of course, is only in our shoreline areas if we don't have any boathouses.
Do it that way.
So if you're
So maybe we combine them and then you talk about your amendments or what you want to do. So legally, Malia, what do we do here to unwind the original motion to just do 17A?
As long as both the first and the second agree, then you don't have to do anything. You can just.
Does the first and second agree that we put them together? You agree, Doug and Kim? Okay. So under Environmental Services Committee, 17A and 17B, do we have a motion to have those put on the floor?
16A and B.
It's 17 A and B.
Yep, amended it. So 17A is resolution authorizing the lobbying of Wisconsin.
Yeah,
State.
on,
That's the only wrong one. It's on my desk.
you have an amended one on your desk too.
Oh, yeah, okay. Fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, thank you for straightening me out, sir.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion, send it back to committee.
Well, first we got to make a motion to put them both on the floor.
Oh, I can make that motion then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to put 17 A and B together. So we have a first and a second. Is there further discussion?
Second.
So is there let's talk about what they are. Let's hear what they are about. Go ahead, Jason. Please.
Go through some proposed
Please.
text.
Yeah.
The first one that is proposed to be changed is the definition of a boathouse. The current definition that we had was close in that to the state statute, close enough that the DNR allowed us to have it, but it doesn't mimic it exactly. So the proposed definition there is word for word at NR 115, so which the county does have obligations to comply with. So that's kind of self-explanatory. Just go down a little bit. One of the provisions under NR 115 is that it is used for the storage of watercraft and associated materials, and that a little bit different than boat storage and storage of marine-related equipment. So that's just, those words are directly from NR 1. That's all that's changing with the boat houses. Pretty self-explanatory there. One special note to note on a boat house is that now with the state law, how it is, we cannot require somebody to establish a full buffer and that down by the water, and that just because they want to build a boat house. And that. So for any purpose in that, we cannot require a buffer to be installed. So it could be an option. Okay, so this is, in both the shoreline and the comp ordinance now. Bunkhouses, currently, we have a maximum square footage of 400 square feet. We've also got a lot of issues as far as administration goes with like the 50% of the square footage of the accessory structure. That's fine, but we get questions all the time from builders and that. What do you want to count in that for your bunkhouse square footage? Is it, the stairway? Is it, a closet? All that kind of stuff. So we originally pulled this definition right here from Burnett County because I thought that they had a little bit of extra things in there that kind of explained it a little bit more, enclosed porches, decks, that kind of stuff. The committee, after talking about it and going through public comment, came up with the area there, which really refers back to bunkhouse floor area, which we do have a definition for bunkhouse. And so basically it's anything in that is part of that bunkhouse, any storage area must be segregated from the bunkhouse area. So that's what they came up with. They did, when they sent that, or just sent these amendments to the county board, they did make that recommendation to change that definition. Instead of just trying to piecemeal this and that, I just did a whole separate, so it's clear. When we started allowing bunkhouses were actually put into the ordinance in 2016. So this amendment is not new. We're just going through and amending the existing prerequisites, if you will, for building a legal bunkhouse. There's a lot of concern about sanitary systems, and 5 and 6, I brought to the committee and that because we're seeing lots and lots of these garages being built with the guest room above the top, or it's a bonus room, it's a game room, and that, well, we all know in that a year down the road or when the property is sold, for sure that people are starting to put beds in them and use them as bunkhouses. One of the issues in that we have in all of our houses is that we want to make sure that we have adequate sewer systems on these lots to be able to address the number of people, because if the house is full, we got to have overflow sleeping quarters. More than likely, we got too many people for the sewer system as well. So we brought that to the committee. They took and looked at that and said, yes, we're okay with bunkhouse having a separate sanitary system. by having it separate, on these small lots, we have a lot of issues with well setbacks. We have a lot of issues in that with buildings and having suitable soils. So allowing a holding tank will address some of those issues because our setbacks are about half of what they are if you have a drain field component. They also work on lots that are, common with high groundwater, like a lot of our lots on Bull Lake are. And, we're still going to address in that the people, having adequate sanitary. Number 8 is kind of duplicating what we already have because we have a county sanitary ordinance, pretty in-depth one that covers hooking up accessory buildings and that to an existing sanitary system and that kind of stuff. So that's really not required. So the committee also suggested striking that provision. Provision 9 here was one of the original amendments that was proposed. All of our dwellings right now are allowed to be 35 feet tall. All of our accessory buildings that are allowed to be 35 feet tall. The only ones in that are limited to 25 feet anymore, which used to be the last or max height for an accessory building, is 35. So that's more of a consistency matter, just to balance the two, so that if somebody has a garage that they want to build and their loft, underneath this rule is over 400 square feet, they're going to still permit it at the shed so that they can go up to 35 feet tall versus permitting it as a bunkhouse and only be limited to 25. So that's kind of the issue there, is you might get some people working around it. Number 18, that one is completely duplicated to an outlot, because anytime that we have a subdivision that comes through with a lot that doesn't meet the minimum lot size requirements, it's automatically an outlot. So if they cannot be built on the outlot in provision 13, then there's definitely no need to have that it must meet the minimum lot size. So basically the changes for the bunk houses. Any questions on that?
You have fences too in this, right?
Yep, correct. So any questions on bunk houses? Yeah. Or no?
So if they have a sanitary system, they build a bunkhouse. You're saying that they have to have a holding tank for that portion of their sewer? Or their sewer needs to be updated to the additional bedrooms?
Currently, and that what the ordinance requires right now is if you got a 3-bedroom cabin and you've got a good sewer system, maybe you just put it in 2010, it might be working fine. But because you got 3 bedrooms in your cabin, now you're adding a bunkhouse, which is going to be at least 1 bedroom. You need a 4-bedroom sewer system. So that means right now, and with the one provision says that you cannot have a separate sanitary. So it means you got to redo your house sewer, and that just because you want to add that bunkhouse. People hear that and they walk away. And that the only ones that we've actually permitted since 2016 are like 4 or 5 of these. They've been around Wapple, Bear Trap, or Lake Magner, where they've got a public sanitary system. It's easy to deal with extra waste. And that, so back to this, and that what this is going to do is, okay, you got a small lot, you don't maybe have enough room to do a replacement sewer for your main house. That one gets to continue going as it is, but now you still want this bunkhouse, and that now you can set a holding tank for that one, or you can put in a conventional sewer just to deal with the bunkhouse waste. And sometimes it's going to be a lot easier to get 2 small systems on a lot than it is 1 massive system.
I just have a question. Can these be rented out by the owners? Not. Does that, what part of the code does that fall under?
Yeah, well, I'm assuming you're talking like a tourist rooming house or
RVOs.
rental. Yep, and that. Underneath our provisions there, we state underneath the tourist rooming house that the dwelling unit, that must be the principal structure.
Because I was on the county board 5 minutes and I had people calling me complaining about that going on. So that's why I'm asking.
Right. One thing about a bunkhouse too is that they are not allowed cooking facilities, and that you can still have a kitchen and stuff. And that, but as far as like a range and the full house and that is different. So.
I still want to make the motion.
I know you do, but I want to let everyone ask Jason his questions before you make your
Okay,
motion.
but we had just a ton of emails. You must have had them.
I had a few of them.
I also got from the president of Pickler, I got a phone call from the president of Bone Lake Management District. And they're quite concerned because now you've got 1,000 square feet as almost putting two structures, two separate homes on a lot. That's the way they're looking at it.
I know they
And also with boathouses, if you can have them be for settled residents and habitat, then they're going to become bedrooms there too. So we're looking at 1,000 and we're looking at 500 feet.
So let's talk about these things before we go there. So Jason, can you address, because I can tell you, I got a call from the president or the president of the Balsam Lake Rehab District, because he got the letter and some phone calls from the Pickler also. And once I explained to him those issues, he's like, well, you can publicly tell everyone that I withdraw my letter. I just needed to know the facts. So I think tonight's really good. We're getting facts out because there's a lot of comments out there that aren't accurate. And that's why I think it's important that Jason goes through it all. So before we vote on your motion to send it back to committee, I think the board deserves to hear the whole story before we do that, because of some people are trying to shut this down. So
Well, I don't think it was more than a few.
okay, well, one group started the email chain, so I know that for a fact.
The bunkhouse, 1,000 foot include stairs and decks?
It would include bunkhouse area, so no, not stairs.
Have a deck on top. And the second question is on this kitchen thing. I mean, anybody can put a little hotel refrigerator and a little hot pot and good for a week. How does that get enforced? How do we even know that? How do we?
Pretty easy to enforce, actually. I mean, we just take and contact the owner and tell them that we want to set up a time and then walk through. Try to catch them on site, and that has to go for a walkthrough, and then so that's not beforehand or so that they can't go and pull that stuff out. So that's not too bad. Believe it or not, we don't have the issue with that so much, and that we have more issues with the sanitary systems of people just doing it and that, because right now they'll still build that 1,200 square foot bunkhouse and be using it as it, and then it's a complete, enforcement issue. And we've got all of that amount of impervious already on the lot. We're not increasing the amount of buildings on the lot, and that by allowing bunkhouses, those are some of the issues in that. So it's actually more of an enforcement nightmare right now just because we can't get them permitted. And you could have Sam Hill and that's never built anything before building his garage, and that now all of a sudden you got people sleeping in there. That's the huge thing about permitting bunkhouse is they have to meet the uniform dwelling code, and then that ties in all the inspections for the electrical and plumbing and even right down to the footings and that. So hopefully in that, by making a bunkhouse an easier permitted structure, we can increase the safety of the people that are staying. You gotta remember, some of these are 1950s buildings.
Hey, Fran.
I just have a question. I'm certainly not an expert in this by any means, but it's my understanding like Act 55 was to provide uniformity across the state with some of these kind of minimum standards. Okay, so what's being proposed? Has that been vetted really through the DNR for compliance with Act 55?
And so Act 55, and that really was in 2015, Act 55, told the county how they're supposed to work with their shoreline ordinance compared to the state statute, which is 59,692 for shoreline zoning, and NR 115. And the statute, there's actually a provision in there that says if the administrative code is mute on something, that then the county can enforce it and regulate it. Even the uniform dwelling code doesn't touch bunkhouses and that. If you go to every county and that, they're probably going to have different rules and regulations. So this is going to be in compliance with NR 115. It's strictly policy decisions that you guys can make. And there's not going to be any issue with that. NR 115 does, regulate mitigation and the amount of impervious surface that you can have on a lot. Polk County takes it one step farther, and that on our class one bigger lakes, we limit the number of accessory buildings you can have on a property to 2, plus then the dwelling unit. So it's a 3-structure rule on any of our bigger lots, and a bunkhouse does qualify for that. So you got your boathouse, you got your dwelling, and you've got your garage or your bunkhouse in the back. And typically, the garages and the bunkhouses are farther back from the water and that. So one could look at it another way is saying, well, if they don't get their bunkhouse, they're going to add on to that house, and that impervious is going to be closer to the lake then. So.
Go ahead, Amy.
I just have a kind of how to read this resolution question. So I read the resolution and there's not a whereas in here about, we had this whole conversation. I popped in periodically with environmental services, and I know this sort of started with this zoning of towns role, like the role that towns have, and we have it on this fiscal and legal impact to limit the use of regulation of shoreland area by county and towns where they have their own zoning. But I don't see the connection between what we're trying to do with boathouses and fences and septic requirements and this other issue of allowing towns to do their own zoning within shoreland. That
conflict with Act 55?
I don't think that's on the agenda, but this here.
Well, this is it's right here. I'm trying to understand what's right here. Or if that's a typo and shouldn't be there. This would limit the use of regulation.
It's on the
within
resolution.
shoreland area by county and towns that have their own zoning. So this is part of that whole environmental services had that conversation about towns wanting to have zoning, and Supervisor Kelly brought it up around the St. Croix outdoor conflict. And then I was reading that, so I was like, oh, we're talking about that. And then all of a sudden, there was all this other stuff having to do with boathouses. And so I got a little confused. You can help me out here.
I believe that that is not the correct. So that's in resolution 2021, and that's still in committee.
Yeah.
This year is going to apply that wide. I do see what you guys
there. See it on the side there?
Yeah, I do see it down there. So that would be really more geared towards 2021 resolution, not 2040.
So what is that? Then does that go away?
Is that a Scrivener's error or something?
I think it's a Scrivener's error.
Okay.
You know.
Leah might have a comment.
Malia, can you address that?
Yes, that would be a Scrivener's error. That has not been acted on by a committee, that concept. So if it is showing up here, then that's just an error. I think the board should ignore it. It has not gone through committee.
Good call, Amy.
I couldn't connect the dots.
And then I got one other part of the ordinance that we're really just trying to clarify.
Supervisor O'Connell?
I was just gonna say, still on this part, the bunkhouse, you can build a garage, sewer to it. And leave your upstairs unfinished, do that a year later. So that's the mess we're in.
Right.
A garage is legal to hook up. You call it a garage. Everybody puts a loft. All the inspections are gone, then they put their bunkhouse in.
And
This will catch them.
And I would like to make a comment too, as long as the board is okay, I interject while I'm chair, or I'll have John sit up here. So if anyone feels like I need to step down, raise their hand. But as a builder in the county for 25 years, I can tell you that when we go out and talk to, and this is all shoreline stuff, we don't get any of these issues out in the country. People say, I want to find some space, right? So you tell them what Jason said. We go out and say, I can build you a 35-40 garage. I can build you a 1,200 square foot garage. And I can put you an attic up there for your bonus room, right? And we can hook sewer up to your garage. That's all legal. And I know darn well, and we put on our application that project is a $75,000 or $50,000 garage. A couple years ago it was 50, now it's 75. We put down 75 grand for that project on our application. I know very well that the 20 or 30 that I've built over the last 25 years in Polk County, I'm gonna guess if you go back to them, they all look a lot different than they do the day we left the job. So we know there's not compliance because the rules are so difficult. Now, when someone says, well, I want to put rooms up there, well, you only have 400 square feet. Well, I want 1,000, or I want 500, or I want 2,500. So what do we do now is you have your garage on that lot, that's impervious surface. There's a roof on it and there's concrete. You got a house with impervious surface and you got a boathouse if they got all three. That house is usually 75 feet back from the lake. I can add 2,500 square feet, 3,000 square feet. We've added 4,000 square feet to that dwelling. They're going to still add, and I come at it as I'm a proponent on protecting the shoreline and the water quality. To me, those people would hands down not add on to that additional impervious surface right at the setback. And we're already building the garage, 30 by 40 garage, or the whatever. No one builds a 24 by 24 garage anymore. Those days are over. So we build in the garage on the back of the property. The best thing for the quality of the water is to don't put more dwelling and more impervious surface down by the water. Let them do it within that garage roof system. It makes all the sense in the world to get people in compliance. Because now on that permit, it should say $350,000. Well, that's a lot better for all of us. Plus, now we get a legal sewer hookup. Plus, we get the local building inspectors making sure that stairs are safe, glass is safe, egress windows are correctly installed, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide. Everything would be so much more in compliance. And for everyone to think that there's another structure going on the property, you can't add a bunkhouse on another piece of your property if you got a dwelling and a garage and a boathouse. So you're either going to add the addition to your house or you're going to add it above the garage. So I talked to the president of the rehab district in Balsam Lake, and once I explained what the proposal was, he wanted to make sure I let the committee know he was withdrawing his letter of concern, that he thought it was a good idea for Balsam Lake that this ordinance would go through. I did get more concerns about the 7 or 8 foot high fencing. To me, that's going to turn our lakes into a residential neighborhood if we let everyone build an 8 foot fence down their property line. To me, that's what the comments I heard was what we should worry about. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood from contractors' perspective that this would, I think, really help get people in compliance. They're already doing it. And I think it's great that we can put sewers and do all that work. So go ahead, Jason. Or Fran, you had a question about bunkhouses?
Yeah, I do. So can people do the bunkhouse? And then Chris was talking about the big additions and expansions of the home. Would they be able to do both? If they wanted to, they could do both then.
You can if you don't meet the runoff rating. If your lot's too small, our county's balanced by a runoff rating. Can you explain that, Jason?
So the state, part of Act 55, they took and said that every lot can have 15% impervious. And that between 15 and 30% impervious, they have to mitigate with a rain garden or a floating team, like an infiltration pit, or native plantings like doing a buffer. And any amount of impervious surface over 30%, that is, so unless it's pre-existing.
You could have a lot that there's no way you could put 1,000 square feet on the lot. You might have a lot over on Boat Lake that you can't add any square footage to a lot. It's all based on your runoff rating, how much impervious surface you can have, and you still got to meet all the setbacks. Brad?
Yeah, I think these are happening around the county. We have them. It's a matter of, do we want to say we're going to allow them, or do we want to keep people doing it behind the scenes? That's really what it amounts to. Because if I want a bunkhouse on the lake, I'm going to build it. So do we allow it? Do we take the $350,000 building and taxes over the $70,000 building? That's really what it amounts to. Because if I want one, I'm going to build it. They've been doing it for years. They'll keep doing it for years. This is just about hopefully bringing a whole bigger chunk of them into compliance.
Someone tell us too, the board, on the process you guys got to get it to this point and how the committee voted on this?
So it started in committee and then that was a proposal. We had several meetings there. Then on April 15th, and that staff and that filed the petition in the county clerk office and that to basically create the amendment process or start that process going. Right after that, we did the class 2 notice. Because we are amending the comprehensive ordinance, we got to provide each town clerk with a certified copy of the actual petition and the proposed ordinances. We also email it out to various lake districts and also town chairs. There's a whole list, the whole DNR staff. So that's all done behind the scenes. And then we had the public hearing on May 5th. And at the public hearing, we had 3 written comments that were submitted and 1 verbal comment that was submitted. The 3 written ones that we received are basically in support of bigger bunkhouses or not having any bunkhouse language at all, so that they would be kind of a free-for-all. Those were the 3 written ones. The one that we received verbally, and that was in opposition to the size of the 1,000 square feet. Then after that, I've got a report here and that I can also show you, but basically it's just what I summarized. And that we file and that with the county. Basically providing that we've got all the notices and stuff sent out to the appropriate. Then anytime an ordinance is adopted, then we have to go through the publication process, and that's really when it becomes effective. It's not, tonight if you were going to enact something, it's whenever that is published. So usually that's the following Wednesday.
How was it voted out of committee?
It's unanimous.
You guys keep talking about garages. Is it really mostly that we have garages with living quarters above them and you're calling that a bunkhouse?
Yeah, so like when we permit a garage, and then on our permit, it says storage only, no human habitation. You can have a game room up there, you can have a pool table, a man cave, she shed, whatever you want to call it. And that's perfectly fine. It's not until you start sleeping in it or have the sleeping accommodations in it that then it becomes a violation because you're human habiting in that structure.
How did we really get from the 400 to 1,000? Was it just in response to this email that was a request, or was it the that's a pretty big jump.
I believe the committee had a few emails on that mentioned 1,000 square feet, and then it was just talked about the committee. So that's again, all these rules are all just policy decisions. They're
You guys had a discussion, a couple meetings on sizes, right? It was all over the board. Can someone explain to Amy, the committees, how they came to 1,000 square feet? I think the board would like to hear that.
It was a number picked. It was a number agreed upon by the committee.
Yeah.
1,200 was out there, 800 I think was out there, 1,000 was out there, and it was just. Yeah, it ran
consensus that that's what the consensus.
We talked about the size of the garages and stuff people are building now.
30 by 40 garages.
Because you don't have the 24-foot square garage anymore.
Yeah.
You've got the 30 by 40 realistically or bigger, but question for Jason. So the lake associations, they all had knowledge that this was coming to the public hearing, but none of them responded,
The
right?
only one that we received an email from, and I believe that was copied to most of the supervisors, was from Pittsburgh, the County Lakes and Rivers Association. And it was submitted by Carol Ingebrigtsen, and she was in objection to that, to both ordinances. That's the only one I got. I think you guys maybe got some more than that, but that's the only one I was copied.
How many lake associations signed on that? We got a bunch of sign.
It was just copied. They copied all their members in that letter.
But he did.
No one else signed on to it.
23 members.
23 lake districts. Yep.
they emailed that to. And that's where our lake association said, you know, we get this all the time and we just need to hear more about it. And that's why, or Balsam Lake Rehab.
Balsam Lake was listed on the paper.
Yeah. All right, so we good with bunkhouses. What about the fences?
Right, so part of the ordinance codification project that you guys adopted tonight on the consent agenda is to really try to make our rules easier for people of the public to find. And fences is a really tough one right now because even as staff, we have to piece everything together. We have to look at a privacy fence being a structure in the shoreline area, so it's got to follow all those requirements of NR 115. And we also got to look at, okay, is it an open fence? Well, now we have to allow you to have an open fence in certain areas because Chapter 90 of the Wisconsin statute has the boundary fence. So in here, we're looking at just amending the definition of privacy fence and creating the whole open fence. Ever since 2016, when we created the definition of a privacy fence, that's when we said that a privacy fence, 4 feet or less in height is not a privacy fence. If the privacy fence is over 4 feet in height and over 50% solid so that you can't see through it, then it is a privacy fence because it is blocking your view. Whereas an open fence is just the exact opposite. It's more than 50% open. So if I had my picket fence and it's a 1x6 board, I know a 1x6 measures 5.5 inches. And that if I have my board, a 3-inch gap board, that's an open fence. So it is still pretty lenient that way. Right now, our fences are accessory structures, which we have a 35-foot max height on. So our privacy fence right now, we could have 35 feet. Before it changed from 25 feet, I do know of one fence in the county that was constructed as a privacy fence, and it is 25 feet tall. And those neighbors did not get along. So, it was originally talked about as making the max height on a privacy fence being 7 feet. Now, I want to make it clear that when we measure height in that, it's from lowest exposed grade to the top. And that, so if the post goes up above the paneling and that, then we measure to the top of the post. If it's the paneling that's the highest, we measure to that, just like any other structure that we deal with. That falls underneath the general provisions of the ordinance as far as how we measure height. The committee at the public hearing suggested trying to be consistent with our fences and try to make both privacy and open fences have a max height. Then Article 11E, this is the shoreline zoning provisions. Open fences and that can go right down to the water. However, privacy fences and that are required to start at the 75-foot setback because they are a structure. We've never had a setback to a side property line before in between the neighbors. So the committee put in there a 2-foot side yard setback. Plus, they obtained permission from the adjacent neighbor and that to build the fence right on the property line so that everybody can clean it. That 2-foot idea was so that somebody could actually walk along the other side of their privacy fence and screw a board on if they need. Privacy fences and that, when it comes to road setbacks, are required to meet it, just like any other structure. Of course, in that, if it was on a town road or one of our roads that we allow a reduced structure setback, if they obtained approval from the town, they could do less of a setback. Whereas open fences, think of this as maybe as simple as a barnyard fence or a barbed wire fence to keep animals in. They're able to build them right up to the right-of-way line. So most of our town roads, that's going to be 33 feet. State roads, it can vary. Basically, those are those 4 provisions right there. So anything that these last 3 are also in the comprehensive. So this is how we've been administering this and that for years. Now with that ordinance codification, somebody will be able to Google fence and I'll pull it up, and that's the huge reason for trying to include this language. Fences.
I have a question on fences, Jason. So 7 or 8 feet, I struggle with that in the shoreline district, that you could build a your typical fence boards that you go down to the local lumberyard are 6 foot tall. An 8-foot fence is very tall. I would like to make an amendment to that we would change that to 6 foot.
Something that can happen on the floor.
And that is yeah, that before we would get Doug, and I don't mean to jump here. I know, before we would send this back to committee, I'm concerned with fences going right so that fence, an open fence could go into the setback of that 35 feet of the buffer around the lake, right?
No. Privacy fence, and that would have to be back 7.
What about an open fence?
An open fence, and that can go right up to the water, and that's where 1x6 example with that 3-inch gap is still gonna look pretty massive.
How tall can it
And
be?
that 8 feet.
Right.
So,
To me, that it's an aesthetic issue, and I know it's maybe a privacy issue for people, but I personally think if we start allowing fences to be built right to the water's edge, 8 feet tall, it clearly changes the character, it's a good word, of our lake. So I would make an amendment to not allow any fence to go into the setback area and no fence to be taller than 6 foot. That is an amendment I would make. I would need a second if it goes any
That
further.
would be 75 feet back for both.
No, 35 feet. No fence could go within that 35-foot buffer that DNR says
Okay.
we shouldn't be touching.
What we discussed in committee, if I recall correctly, is we wanted 6 feet because why even put it up?
Yeah.
That was our discussion. If you're gonna see right over it all the time, then why even construct? That's what came out of committee.
Get a second.
I don't know Amy seconded it. Now we can have a discussion. I understand. I've listened to it.
Most of them are keep the neighbor's dogs out.
Man,
So I have a next question. Okay, so I have found throughout my years of working in local government that there's been, I believe, some case law. A lot of regulation and ordinances and things have language in about getting permission from neighbors. That has been challenged, and it has been found that you can't delegate the municipal body authority to regulate something to people, to neighbors, and take that away from the governing body. I don't know if Malia has any comments about that or not. That just came up with us recently, this deal of, well, the neighbors have said, okay, you can't delegate your authority as a board to somebody's neighbors. I don't know how I actually.
Malia, can you answer that?
I am not aware of that case law, but it sounds like it would be reasonable, because how could the current occupant know what the future occupant would give permission for? But having said that, anything is allowable until it's challenged. So something like this, where perhaps both neighbors would have a vested interest in having it right on the property line, because that's something they both want, unless and until somebody challenges that, and that would have to be some future property owner. I don't think it would be a big issue here, but the concept itself, my guess is Fran is likely correct but I would have to look at the case law. I'm not aware of it.
I do know, Fran, that in the village of Balsam Lake, okay, it's a municipality. If you want to build a fence on the property line, you have to get the neighbor's approval with a letter to give to the village for the issue of permit, if it's on the property line.
That's very, very common. That's something that we used to do that we don't do anymore because of legal challenges to that.
Sure.
And the possibility of you're not always going to have the same neighbors there. So I'm no attorney. I don't know, but it's worth mentioning.
Are we talking about getting permission from your neighbor to build your fence over 6 feet, or what are we talking about?
We're talking about getting your neighbor's permission to build it within 2 feet of the property.
Oh, I thought the amendment was on the height of the fence, not.
The amendment
It
is.
is.
It is?
That's what the
Okay.
amendment is.
Then I got a point of order that we get back to
Stand back to
the.
the 6 foot.
Okay, point of order taken. Yeah, so the amendment was for, can you say again what my
Amendment was to take and change privacy fence from 8 feet to 6 feet, and then to prohibit any fences within 35 feet of the ordinary high water. So,
That's correct.
one thing I would say, Mr. Chair, and that about clarification on that is we might want to throw in an exemption and that for the property line boundary fences that are listed in chapter 90 of the statutes to be within that 35 feet. Because I think anybody is entitled to have that boundary line fence. So I believe our ordinance would be
I agree.
conflicting with statutes.
I
So
agree with that.
then the amendment would be to change the privacy fence height from 8 feet to 6 feet with no fences allowed within 35 feet of the ordinary high water mark unless it's a fence specifically specified in chapter 90 of the statutes. And that's typically, your 4-strand barbed wire or your 3-strand barbed wire, your 2-strand barbed wire with a chicken wire on the bottom for so much, and as far as height. There's about 20 different types that they say is a legal property fence. And that's the only thing that I think that we would be obligated to provide.
You're talking more in an egg setting.
Not gonna be blocking people.
Joe?
Question I have here, according to listening to Malia, is that it's okay to do it without the problem of your neighbor taking it and not wanting it. Why don't we make it so they have no option?
Explain that again.
Okay, it's 8 foot now, or 4 foot, 8 foot now. You want to change it to 4 foot?
I said 6.
Okay, then your neighbor wanted that 8 foot. Then now they can't have it because they changed the
They
ordinance.
could get a variance. Couldn't they apply for a variance in a certain situation on that?
Why can't we make it
8 foot?
a law and be done with it?
It's maximum.
Maximum height.
You don't have
I'm just
to
saying,
build
that's what a fence board, you go to Menards, you buy a fence board, you can buy them 6 feet tall. Most fences are 6 feet. 8 foot's pretty, you building the 8-foot fences right to the water's edge?
It's gonna be 75 feet back.
Oh, no, you can, as long as it's open half, 50%. So you could leave little gaps, and like you said, it's still gonna look like a fence. So you're gonna look through the gap, or you're gonna look over the top, I guess, but it's bringing that fence right into the setback. That's the problem that I think is gonna, I think when the lake districts find out that people start getting permits to build fences right to the water's edge, I bet we'll be back here a year from now talking about this. And I'm just saying it today because that's what I heard from our lake association, our rehab district. That was what they were concerned with. And they didn't even see that in the letter from Pickler. But I don't think anyone really realized that impact of that. So I'm just bringing it on behalf of the rehab district in Balsam Lake.
8 feet is what? High is that?
Be close.
Call for the question.
That's what it's 10.
We have, so we called the question. Do we want a voice vote on this or do we?
Try it.
Okay, so
Like, what do we call the question? You had Doug's, where did Doug's thing go?
Doug's is waiting after this. We want to get through this. Doug still has got something that's going to come.
Yeah, okay,
Send it
that
back
thing-
to
that's
committee.
the amendment of your 6-foot amendment.
Okay, the question was called, but go ahead, Doug.
I do this all the time, but explain exactly what we're voting on.
I know, that's my question.
Jason, would you say it again?
Okay. The amendment is to reduce the privacy fence maximum height to 6 feet tall instead of 8 feet tall. And to also add provision in here, probably number 10, that no fences within 35 feet of the ordinary high water mark except for fences allowed specifically under Wisconsin statute, chapter 90 as a boundary fence.
Okay, the question was called. All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So now we're back to the original resolution. Does anyone else want to make any motions? Doug does. We talked about it all.
I know
Go ahead, Doug.
everybody's heard that it was unanimous, and I've changed my mind.
Sure.
And I'd like to analyze this more, let the public know more of the answers. And so I'm making a motion to post or to send it back to committee.
The both resolutions.
Yeah.
Which committee?
Huh?
Which committee?
Which committee? Environmental committee, sir. Mr. Chairman.
He's trying
Sure.
to joke.
Yeah.
So we got a motion now to send it back to committee, this whole thing.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we got a first and second. Is there any discussion? Russ?
I don't know about the rest of the board, but I've heard enough to make a decision. I'll deal with anyone that calls me, anyone that challenges the decision I make tonight. So I would be opposed to sending it back to committee, unless maybe the entire committee asks for it.
Sure. Not because we have one member that got roughed up this week. Mr. Pritchard?
And thank you, Judge, for a nice presentation. I would like, however, to get your presentation and a copy of the actual language that's being proposed to be able to read it. It wasn't, it said that the resolution was worded for the attached and so on. Nothing was attached. And, I'd like to have an opportunity to do that, so I'd be supportive of waiting to have a final vote. Had a little chance to look at it.
That has been on the website, Mr. Pritchard, for a number of weeks, and there was a public hearing. So again, as a supervisor, if you want that information, it was available weeks ago. Any other discussion about the first and the second? Amy?
If this goes back to committee, I'd like to see the discussion between the 1,000-foot and the 400. I like this concept. I like what you guys are trying to do to capture what's going on and the problems. I guess I'd be a lot more comfortable if it wasn't so big. It wasn't a whole, 1,000 square feet is a lot. So if you guys could have that discussion on the square footage and come back to us with something more reasonable, I think then we can kind of capture both things.
So you weren't comfortable with the discussion they already had? What you're saying?
1,000-foot was what I'm not.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else from that committee? All good? What do you got, John?
I live on a lake, and I think that 1,000, I think you guys explained that very well. We had all kinds of different numbers. We look for vision. I think 1,000, I think you guys did a diligent, really diligent job. 300.
I agree.
We had a lot of discussion on it. And even if it goes back to committee, I think we're gonna end up the same place.
What could you accomplish? I agree with Russ.
Okay, so we've discussed it. We all know everything. No one's going to change their mind. I'll do we have the motion to send it back to committee. All in favor of sending it back to committee? You want a roll call on your amendment? Sure. We'll do a roll call.
Right, so roll call vote. We start with Tim O'Connell.
No.
Middleton.
Yes.
Luke. Duncanson. Marcan. John Bonifaz.
No.
Joe Demmeling.
Yes.
Fred Olson.
No.
Doug Rowdy.
Yes.
Steve Warndall. Christine LeBlanc. Yes. Ken Rook.
No.
Mike Pritchard.
Yes, yes.
Karen Kelly.
No.
You voting?
I'll wait to see if there's
6 yeses and 8 noes.
motion failed. We're back to the original. We've had a good discussion. I'll call the question. We're voting on both ordinance 17A, 17B on the lines, 2421 and 2521. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Number 18. 18A. Resolution 2621, resolution authorizing the lobby state create the substance abuse. I think we can handle all these together if possible. 18B is resolution 2721. 18B is resolution 2821, and Chad can speak to all these at one time. Board is okay with that. You guys good with doing them all at once? Chad?
So the board wanted to introduce some resolutions to do something regarding the substance abuse epidemic. Present to the WCA for possible adoption by the WCA before to the legislature. We broke it into 3 different items instead of putting everything into one resolution. The first one is a substance abuse state database, basically data analytics for the state. That is actually something similar is in the coast governor's budget. Right now it's been cut, but everything in the governor's budget's been cut by executive finance committee, and they tend to come back and readopt things. So this just supports funding for that. It says we want funding for some data analytics. Resolution 2721 is a lobbying resolution to create community-based inpatient, outpatient substance abuse treatment centers in order to put treatment centers in locations like ours that are underserved. And then the last resolution is again a funding resolution to reinstate funding and to increase funding to the special prosecutor section, which has been a very successful program for the border counties, and it's been slashed substantially over the past couple of years.
Anyone have questions to Chad about these resolutions? We did have Counties Association review these.
We did. We went over these with Dan Barr to see if there was enough specificity and enough to get statewide support, in his opinion, and met the general criteria the WCA looks at.
John?
I can tell you that the second one, 17B, the legislature has appropriated the money to build a facility, but not any money to operate.
Sure. Russ?
I'm actually make a motion to bring them.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Sharon. All in favor?
Okay, yeah. I'm in a motion that we could.
Oh,
have
discuss it
discussion.
now. Okay, excuse me. No, we're not voting on it yet. Now the
Don't care
discussion.
to vote on, but my motion is just to bring it to the floor so
Gotcha.
we can have discussion.
Appreciate you stepping in like that. We got a first and a second. Now we can have a bigger discussion if we need to. Seeing done. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign carried. Supervisors' announcements and outside meetings attended. Anyone have, Mr. Warndall?
Just for the record, when I go to a fair board meeting, go in closed session, I excuse myself and go home. Okay? So just so everybody knows. It's not part of my job.
Just an update, the museum, Polk County Museum is going to open Memorial Weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and will be open. You can go to their website, see the hours of operation, and it's all ready to go. It's get a chance to see the change. Done it great, and it's all volunteers too. We do a lot, yeah, it's a lot of volunteers.
Volunteers. Amy?
Should we do PTAG?
Sure.
The PTAG's been meeting monthly, and we have hired the consulting firm. They're starting staff meeting with them with a kickoff meeting Thursday. And then we all get together with them. PTAG does. They're scheduling, calling them deep dives, where we'll meet at an ATV trailhead or a bike trailhead or a whatever, and meet like really intensely about that trail spot. So if anyone here is interested, talk to me or Chris Bob, if you're interested in coming to one of those, or if you know people in your districts that you should send to one of these stakeholder meetings, that would be helpful. And this will be kind of the basis that the consulting firm will use to kind of gauge, not necessarily citizen input, but just kind of get a lay of the land of what the county has. So, let's think forward.
Fran?
Sure, I attended Apple River District, and I just want to report that the new weed harvester is here. It's in use. They're trying to get some of those weeds early before they get the river, early leaf, I believe. So that's in use in operation to make the river more enjoyable. And I also had our Arnell Memorial Humane Society board meeting as well.
You know what, Kim?
Probably one of the few that didn't send you the $400 for your iTunes.
Well, hey, Rowdy was halfway down to get them, and I told him to keep going. So where's my $400, Doug?
Good to know you're just
Check's in the mail, Doc.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
That's a move.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Carried.
Sign and die.